I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to announce that item F is off the agenda. Under Personnel Administration, establishing rules and regulations for the conduct of public meetings pursuant to the Sunshine Act will not be on the agenda for this evening. We're going to go to public participation, and remember, we want to keep it to 5 minutes if we can, so everybody please keep their comments directed to the subject.
Bill, is there anything else that's removed from the consideration for this evening?
Now, consent agenda we'll get to in a minute.
Okay.
We're now public participation.
Dan Sherry, Wayne. As this board is aware, last Thursday, February 19th, the Ethics Board closed an ethics investigation against John Nagel, who I do not see here tonight. And there was no announcement at the beginning of the meeting as to why Commissioner Nagel is not present. Is there a particular reason why Commissioner Nagel is not present?
He called and told me that he had a serious cold and he would not be coming this evening.
I see. A serious cold. The ethics complaint that was filed against Commissioner Nagel by me stems from a December 8th, 2014 Board of Commissioners meeting where this entire board was present. At that meeting, when I was inquiring as to how much money the Radnor Conservancy had committed to the purchase of a portion of the Ardrossan tract, Commissioner Nagel stated, "Somebody shoot you," to me. Two weeks ago, John Rice, who advised the Ethics Board, despite never, ever stating publicly that he was not a witness to the conduct, requested that Neil Morris, counsel for John Nagel, and I provide all information that we wanted the Ethics Board to consider prior to the meeting of February 19th. On February 17th, at 6:00 p.m., Mr. Morris submitted a letter stating for the first time publicly that what John Nagel said to me was not, in fact, somebody shoot you, but somebody shoot me. In support of that, Mr. Morris attached no eyewitness statements whatsoever. I, in turn, got a witness statement from Commissioner Booker, who was up on the dais, who confirmed that John Nagel said, "Somebody shoot you" to me. I likewise got a witness statement from a member of the audience, Sarah Pilling, who stated John Nagel did in fact say, "Somebody shoot you" to Dan Sherry. Two people, different sections of the room, that heard it. The February 19th, 2015 Ethics Board meeting, another resident, Leslie Morgan, spoke. She's visible on camera during the December 8th, 2014 meeting, and you've all seen the video. What did Ms. Morgan state? She stated that Mr. Nagel's statement was exactly as I reported it to be, that there was no mistaking it. In fact, she physically reacted by ducking behind her fur coat. And if you watch the video, you can, in fact, see her do that. You also saw what Mr. Morris did to your constituents and what Mr. Morris stated the Radnor Police Department did. He falsely stated that the Radnor Police Department ignored a criminal complaint that he purported that I filed. He also stated that I attempted to file charges against Mr. Nagel, when in fact all I did, as I told the Ethics Board, was give a statement at the request of my distraught wife, making sure that Mr. Nagel, his outburst, was not a precursor to a forthcoming violent act. In fact, we say in our statement to the Radnor Police that to the extent it was just an outburst, that will conclude our interest in having the Radnor Police investigate the matter. And yet Mr. Morris falsely attributed actions to me so as to gain a tactical advantage with the Ethics Board. After that testimony was submitted and other evidence was presented, including an apology from Mr. Nagel, as an aside, the complaint was filed pursuant to 39-2, which mandates, in fact, that Radnor commissioners exhibit the highest standards of morality and act above reproach. to the extent anybody in this room has ever apologized when they honestly believed that they were acting with the highest standards of morality and above reproach, I think it's fair to say that person doesn't know what they're talking about, that they're completely pathological. As well as the fact that Mr. Nagel, despite having that quote attributed to him numerous times in the press and in public meetings, never once sought to correct the record. The Ethics Board, nevertheless, decided that there was not probable cause to find that the ethics code had been violated. There were 2 other ethics investigations in the past year. The first involved Commissioner William Spingler. There was substantial evidence in the public record that Commissioner Spingler was involved in monetary transactions with staffing companies at a minimum of Villanova University and nevertheless voted on issues that impacted Villanova University. Dismissed by the Ethics Board, no probable cause. The next involved complaints of harassment and trespassing attributed to Jim Higgins. Eyewitness testimony of the veterinarian who said, among other things, that Jim Higgins came in and interrupted a surgery that the veterinarian was performing on a cat.
All right, Mr. Sherry,
by the Ethics Board.
Excuse me.
For no probable cause.
Mr. Sherry.
Now,
Mr. Sherry.
we have I'm not going to be interrupted.
I have been exonerated. I have been exonerated by the district attorney and the Radnor Board of Ethics, and I resent you.
I'm not going to be interrupted by
I resent you from saying that I am still under investigation or was guilty of anything.
Mr. Sherry, I didn't state for one second that Mr. Higgins was under investigation. Why was I permitted to be interrupted?
You will not say further that I am guilty of anything. I've been exonerated.
For 1 second that Commissioner Higgins was guilty of anything.
Okay, fine.
It's a complete misrepresentation. How dare you?
All right.
How dare you say that?
Mr. Sherry, fine. What is your point of all? Would you please get to your point, because your time's just about
I
up.
apologize because I was interrupted by an outrageous statement.
What is your point? I mean, what you've said so far, you've already said 4 or 5 times at these meetings.
I'm sorry that you're upset by the fact that you think it's repetitive. This particular complaint was not predicated on things that happened between a commissioner and a private staffing company. It was not predicated on what happened in a private veterinary office where there are not other commissioners around to witness. This relates specifically to conduct that occurred at a Board of Commissioners meeting by a commissioner behind a commissioner placard. Now, what happens if John Nagel's conduct is allowed to stand unreproached by this board? What happens? Will people come in and be willing to speak at meetings if that conduct is allowed to stand? What I will request now, and I hope will be brought up by new business by a commissioner, is that somebody on this board will introduce a motion to censure John Nagel. This board follows Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order specifically recognize that a motion for censure may occur.
All right, thank
As
you.
I know, Commissioner Booker submitted a witness statement. I have no doubt that Commissioner Booker would not find John Nagel's "somebody shoot you" outburst to be consistent with highest standards of morality and acting above reproach. Mr. Curley, I spoke to him on Wednesday and asked him for a witness statement. He told me as follows: Dan, I heard the shoot, but I couldn't tell you one way or the other what followed it. However, if I'm called as a witness, here's what I can tell, and here's how I will testify. That I viewed that statement by Mr. Nagel as threatening and inappropriate. You told me that, sir.
Fine.
Commissioner Schaefer, you served on the Juvenile Law Project. It's on your website.
Mr. Sherry,
prior to
Mr.
becoming on
Sherry,
the Board of Commissioners.
Mr. Sherry, you're way past your time. There are other people who want to speak.
Do you believe, I will wrap up.
All right.
Do you believe that that is consistent with the Juvenile Law Project? Commissioner Higgins, it's been reported that you are, or at least were at one point, treasurer of Operation Ceasefire. Do you believe, based on your training and experience, that it is above reproach and exhibiting highest standards of morality for a commissioner to state at a public meeting, "somebody shoot you"? I'll also note, Commissioner Higgins, from your own website, you specifically specify how important civility is and how you will work to ensure that there is civility to members of the public. You actually put that first. And Commissioner Fisher, you've always struck me as an honorable and decent man. I have no doubt that if a motion to censure John Nagel is introduced during new business tonight, that you will find that conduct is completely and utterly inconsistent with highest standards of morality and acting above reproach. This board does not need people like Lane Vines and Bud Hirsch and Martin Heldring to tell them that that conduct is consistent with that which this board knows is untrue.
Those men served honorably.
Please, at the end of this meeting, somebody introduce a motion to censure John Nagel for his conduct at the December 8th, 2014 meeting. You do not even need to state in the motion to censure what you believe he said, even though there are 3 non-party witnesses that support my account. All it needs be is this board censures John Nagel because his conduct at the December 8th, 2014 meeting is in violation of 39-2. Thank you.
Does anyone else have public comment?
Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue, Rosemont. I want to bring something to your attention which I think is out of order. I am a medical educator, having worked at a variety of medical schools, and I now work at will for Villanova University for the nursing department and for the law clinic. So I am paid a very minimal amount of money by Villanova. And just recently, this is the 4th year I've done it, I received my W-2. And although I earned $1,525, they extracted $18 for local income tax. So what do? Now that's more than 50% of my stormwater fee, and it's also a very nice lunch out. And I believe in doing the right thing. So I have to fill out paperwork. Last year, I had to send supposedly the front page of my federal tax, which I refused to do because this is earned income tax. But now I find this year that I have to file a form that the township sent me the link to send a copy of my W-2 plus the form that they have to Keystone in Irwin, Pennsylvania to get my $18 back. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that the township has to do this. It's ridiculous that you're paying some sort of a fee to Keystone for what Villanova could do correctly. I understand from Bill, and he'll corroborate it, the first year they had to refund 2,000 different checks. That takes time, it costs money. But at the same time, Villanova could send out a mailing saying, oh, do apply to the township for the refund that we were not entitled to receive out of your salary. I think it's time for Radnor Township to put their foot down and tell Villanova, change your method and don't be doing this to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, can I just have a point of clarification? Was that LST tax or EIT?
Yeah, local income tax, the threshold is $12,000.
I understand. LST?
$1,525.
Or was it an EIT tax? Because we don't have EIT.
LST.
Okay, LST.
Local
All right.
tax, after you
Yeah,
reach
everyone
a
is
seal,
subject, anyone who,
makes more than
Got it.
$12,000 gross, who lives in the township, they're entitled to take this tax. But Villanova is just doing it willy-nilly to everybody. And so there's this enormous process to get our money back. Is it worth my getting back the $18? Some people would say no. The first year, it was $6, and I gave it to the township. But now it's the principle of the thing. And I think Villanova has to be told no more.
Okay.
So for
Thank you.
2015, they do not incorrectly connect it.
Any other public comment?
Good evening, Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road. I will try and be brief. I thought that the agenda was going to include the free speech item, so I had some thoughts concerning that. As I understand, the ordinance proposal smacks me personally as an attempt in retaliation for what has just gone on with the Ethics Board and Commissioner Nagel. I may be wrong. It's just a personal opinion. I want to throw it out there and why I believe that for the complaints made. The stated reason that I understand it has actually been written about is because the meetings have been going long. And I certainly appreciate, because we know that you're paid $2,200, and I mean that personally. You guys work really hard. Whether we agree with you or not, you work very hard. I appreciate that. But that the meetings have gone long and that the commissioners are not paid. For historical review, one of the reasons I think it smacks as retaliation is because in the last 24 months, I probably attended almost every BOC meeting. And the history of Radnor Township has gone through an enormous change, and I don't think it's because of public comment that your meetings are running late. Rather, that the 3 largest development applications in the history of your township has gone through, and one is still going through. And that will always lead to very late-night meetings. So I'd like to just address that a little. The first was the largest residential development in terms of land value, historical and emotional perspective in the township, as well as the subsidized dollars for the open space. The second, that was Ardrossan. The second applicant that went through that caused a lot of late-night meetings was the Villanova, which was, again, the largest college and university application that a Board of Commissioners in Radnor Township has ever had to go through. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of community input, a lot of late-night meetings, but the applicants themselves have hour-long presentations, hours long, and come back. So those are going to push your meeting times out. It has nothing to do with public comment. Thirdly, the potential single largest office development, Biomed, is still going through, and I'm sure that will push some of your meetings late because they have long presentations, and their competitor has long presentations. So I don't think it's individual public comment that you need to be concerned about limiting, because I don't see it in terms of the actual facts. Obviously, and these approach almost, I calculated, $700 million in value. So the public is going to come out because they were all over the township and they impact people differently. Some impact people over on Villanova, some down near the Willows and Ward 3 now, Ward whatever numbers it is now, and some up near town. So I think that people have a right to be heard, even if it's repetitive. I mean, I think the most repetitive ones you heard were during the Ardrossan. We had repeat after repeat, and you seem to love that. So I'm not sure what the difference is here. And it concerns me that we're limiting free speech, which would be a terrible thing to do with such an educated community as we have. It would really make you all look bad. I don't think that that's what you want to do, is limit free speech. I think what you're saying is that the meetings have gone too long. Maybe there's been some chaos in the meetings. And I would say that after 23 years running small businesses, as many as I think I got up to something like 300 people, and 90% were women I had to manage. Gather that. I always sense that when there's chaos, it starts at the top, and it's weak management. So instead of censuring us, I would be for an ordinance that collectively censors whether it be your side or the public comment side. I think fair is fair. I thank you for your time tonight. Hopefully it was under 5 minutes.
David Wood, 716 South Roberts Road. I'll try and keep under 5 minutes as well. My first comment is a question about who paid the attorney that represented Mr. Nagel in that hearing the other day. I think if he was paid by you, you never should hire that person again. He was insulting to the public. He was insulting the people that have dedicated years and years of their time to our township. John Haynes, he made political assumptions about people. He turned it into a political thing where it didn't need to be that. And I think that individual should never be hired again. That's the first comment I have to make. He was completely and totally out of line. When I watched the findings on the Ethics Committee hearing, I don't really want to discuss the legal side of it. I don't really know that much about it. I think you'll hear some of that tonight. I want to talk to you about what you can do as commissioners to take care of this situation. You have a real situation on your hands, whether you know it or not. You're losing people, and you're losing them quickly if you don't respond in some way to what was said. You have a commissioner who made a comment to a member of the public in his role as a commissioner on video, and that comment is being let go. What is that telling? We have a series of students in the room, What is that telling all these students about how can you explain somebody that writes a comment on the bathroom wall, somebody who writes it in a personal journal, and then you have a commissioner saying it in public? What are all these students out here thinking? What is their response going to be? Well, why can't I do the same thing? Why is he allowed to get away with that and I'm not? If you do nothing, it sends a message loud and clear to students of Radnor Township School District. The police handled appropriately or inappropriately, we can argue that, similar cases. They held press conferences over the same issue, and you're going to let it go with nothing? I think it would be completely inexcusable if you did that. I think something has to be done. At the hearing, it was mentioned that we can vote. If we want to vote somebody out, we can vote them out. Well, of course we can vote somebody out. There are situations, that's political. This is not a political issue. You're not talking about something that's being handled politically. We don't have to discuss who's of what party, but if you look at it, these aren't political issues. They're not, you don't have people standing up here who are Republicans and saying, let's go get the Democrat. You have people that are standing up here concerned about a behavior that occurred, and I think you need to be careful about that behavior. And if you don't do something to treat it, there's going to be a response to it. And there has to be. The other thing that was argued in front of the Ethics Board by Mr. Nagel's attorney was that the actions and comments were political disagreements, and I think we've seen that that isn't true. Mr. Nagel is not a good role model for our community. He is not a good role model for the students in this room. Commissioners, tonight, do you think somebody is going to stand up here and speak? One of these students out there is going to get up here for public comment after they saw Mr. Higgins' outburst tonight? Is someone going to do that? No. They're certainly not. You're discouraging public comment, and I'm going to say some things briefly about the resolution, because if you need to take that back and at least make sure it's constitutional before you run it out here again. I mean, you can't limit video recording in a public place. It's not something you can do legally. I don't know whether you really want the ACLU in here or not, but you're asking to have them in here, and if you start limiting video productions at things, you're really causing problems. You also have no reason to limit an individual from double commenting. You might think it's a double comment. It's the public that does it. Somebody is standing up and saying, I feel I need to voice my opinion. You don't want to discourage that. You're getting people up that are brave enough to come up here. You're an intimidating group, and they want to make a comment. Let them do it. The resolution is also way too subjective and allows the president of the board to make a decision on the spot about what's in line and what's out of line. Robert's Rules of Order can handle that. You just need to follow Robert's Rules. And the first people you need to have follow Robert's Rules is yourselves. And that's where you need to start. You're setting a standard for the behavior you're looking at from the public. And the reason that there may be misbehavior, well, I would certainly not expect and have not seen misbehaviors on the public's part, you're asking for it because of the way you're treating the public. And I think you need to get that in line, and then maybe it'll be, and you know, I don't want to talk about what was specifically said, not said. You can argue. It's obviously clear. I saw the video of a woman ducking in the front row. To me, that is pretty clear when she repeats what she thinks she heard. Why would she duck if she didn't hear that? So we don't need to get into that. I can play it if you want. I can get my phone out here. I can play it for you, but I don't think that's necessary. I think you as commissioners, maybe at the end of the meeting it'll be necessary, but hopefully it won't be, and hopefully you'll do something to make this situation better than it currently is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Christina Peroni, and I live in Wayne. You have said that people are redundant with their comments with regard to this situation with Mr. Nagel, and I would just say, take control. Just censure him, make a vote, and you're done. At least as far as I'm concerned. You've done the appropriate thing, and it's over. We don't need to keep talking about it. You're setting a standard, and you're living by that standard. I attended the ethics meeting, as did probably 25 other people. It was a tremendous disappointment that the township chose not to videotape it. Again, I feel that's part of limiting free speech. I don't know whose decision that was, but I would assume it was somebody up here's decision to decide not to videotape it. But fortunately, a volunteer from the community did videotape it. And I will reiterate what Mr. Wood said, which was, who's paying Mr. Morse's bill? So I would ask, well, I know I have to address to the president, so who is paying, are the township residents required to pay Mr. Morse's bill for Mr. Nagel?
Under our administrative code, to defend the actions, the official action of any commissioner, it's the solicitor's opinion that, we have to pay that bill.
Okay, and so if he's censured, if a majority of this board chooses to censure him that he was, in effect, not behaving appropriately, still the residents would be required to pay the bill?
That's what the administrative code says, unless you amend the administrative code, yes.
So maybe another
It's paying
thing.
the bill for any employee of the township that is sued while doing it at official meeting or official action.
Okay.
It's not just the commissioners, it's all employees of the
Right,
township.
and my understanding in that situation is you are defended when you are doing your job appropriately and the way that you're supposed to be doing your job. Should you choose to do something, and of course we can all come up with extreme examples like this example, where you're not really behaving appropriately. So I would ask two things. One, that you censure him, and two, that you require him to pay the bill. Because if, in fact, you think it's inappropriate to yell at a member of the public, you should also have some consequences and responsibility. Mr. Morris was, if you watch the tape, unbelievably political and rude to the residents. And I can't even imagine how many thousands of dollars we paid for that, but I believe that should really sit with the commissioners. You do something in your official duty appropriately, yeah, and you get sued, of course. Of course you should be defended, but not when you do something inappropriate. So I would ask somebody else, anybody with a conscience, to please bring that up as well so that the residents don't pay for Mr. Nagel's outburst. Lastly, we were there for 2 hours. People donated their time for 2 hours for that ethics meeting. And at the end, Mr. Morris said nothing other than rude comments to the rest of us that we were all politically activated and we were doing this because we all had other agendas. That was basically, and that Mr. Sherry is a horrible man. Okay. At the very end of it, when their only job was to decide, number one, was he subject to the charter, and two, did he do this action? And Mr. Rice, as the solicitor who should have been a fact witness to the event, Mr. Rice should have told them that was their only job. Should we investigate this or not? Instead, at the end, it was so disingenuous. The second it was over, Mr. Heldring, as chair, said, does anybody have a motion? And Bud Hirsch read the motion that saying we're dismissing it and that we're not going to be the civility police. They knew when they walked in. Mr. Nagel said that comment to somebody walking in the door. Oh, I'm getting off. It's no big deal. It was a hoax. You paid for a hoax. Now you're asking us to pay for it. I ask you to put that on your agenda, anybody with a conscience, to not make the residents pay for his actions. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. I'm Dan Sherry. I'll use senior because junior has already spoken. I don't usually like to use senior. I'd like to address two matters before you tonight, and you've already answered the one question, which is the township paying for the fees of Mr. Nagel's counsel. I've been a trial attorney for almost 40 years. I think I know something about advocacy. I've tried probably more cases than I should have tried. I teach a course in trial advocacy at one of the local schools, so I have a respect for advocacy. And with gray hair comes a respect for advocacy on the other side and appreciating it even when you or your client suffer as a result of it. But what I would say is that those of you who have not watched the tape of that ethics board meeting, that you watch it. It's available on YouTube or some other social media. And you listen to the comments that were made by Mr. Nagel's counsel and the way in which he treated citizens and taxpayers and residents of this township. And you ask yourself, is this what we are paying for, to have our citizens treated this way? And I suggest that if this township does cut a check for Mr. Nagel's counsel fees, that you can certainly congratulate him on the result that he obtained, but you tell him that that approach is not the way that the citizens of Radnor Township deserve to be treated when they engage in a process like this. And secondly, I would suggest, and I suggest this with some seriousness, that someone here move to disband the Radnor Township Board of Ethics. Because frankly, I think it's clear that over the last several months that there is some type of a cloud or protective shield that hovers over Radnor Township that makes the Radnor Township commissioners incapable of committing an offense that would fall within the Radnor Township board, or that would be considered to be an unethical act within the Radnor Township Code. And I'm not going to reiterate, you've already heard tonight what the 3 separate allegations were, but 3 very distinct and 3 very separate allegations that possessed one common thread. And the thread was a ruling by the Ethics Board that none of those events satisfied the probable cause element so as to proceed further with the process. And I'm not in any way prejudging the conduct of any of the commissioners whose conduct was alleged. I'm not a criminal attorney, but I hearken back a number of years ago to law school and as what probable cause means. And probable cause is the lowest level of proof that is required by the one who has the burden of proof to take that matter forward. And it's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not clear and convincing evidence. It's not even more likely than unlikely, but that there is some evidence that an offense was committed and that a certain party committed it. Now, how can one look at any or all of the actions that were under investigation and say that none of those could go to the next stage where there actually is going to be an investigation of what that conduct was involved? How can one look at that and say that there's not at least an issue that a commissioner didn't act according to the charter, beyond reproach or with the highest degree of morality? How can a commissioner say somebody shoot you and someone conclude that that conduct, if done by a student who would be expelled from school or put in a juvenile detention facility, or by an employee who would be terminated by an employer, how can one say that that comment is not worthy of at least an investigation by an ethics board? So I say to you, lady and gentlemen, let's save the township some money. We're all about trying to cut financial expenses these days. Let's save some money on utilities and photocopying and attorney's fees and simply disband the Board of Ethics. And if you think that what I'm saying here is lighthearted or a joke, I submit to you that it pales in comparison to what this township has become in the eyes of many, many citizens. It's become a joke. And this ethics board, and it's comprised of decent people, fair people, but there is some sort of a collective mindset, and I don't know what's influencing them, but there's a collective mindset that has made this, in my view, a joke. And although 2 of you who are up here tonight and 1 other may be the beneficiary of that, I think collectively you should be ashamed and you should be embarrassed at how this reflects upon our township. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annika Walsh, and I'm a senior at Radnor High School. So I was talking with my parents this weekend, and I heard about what happened at the meeting with the outbursts and the threats and the insult, and I was utterly shocked by what I heard. And I did sit afterward and listen to the ethics board meeting, so I know everything that went on. And I heard that if you're going to limit public comment, I just think that's wrong. Everyone in this community has a right to say what they believe to better their community that we all live in. And if you're going to limit the time that the public has and what they have to say, then you should be limiting what you have to say as well, because it is simply not okay that someone stands up here and says what they believe in and they're threatened and insulted. And I don't know how I'm supposed to tell fellow students of mine to come here to these meetings when they believe in something and say it's okay to get up there and say what you believe when they are afraid that that could happen. They're already afraid to stand up here in front of you because it's just a scary thing. And to think that they could be threatened and insulted or told to stop talking for whatever reason is just not right. And I, in fact, spent earlier this year, a fellow student of mine had her personal journal entries released to the media, and I wrote a very respectful letter. And the response I got from a Radnor Township staff member, I felt personally attacked, and I felt it was wrong. So if you're going to limit what you think the public has to say, I think you need to look into what's going on in your own meetings, in the board, and in the staff. And like many people have said, Radnor students are thrown in jail, they're expelled, they're ostracized by the community for writing things on bathroom walls, for simply saying it. Even in my 4th grade class at Ethan Elementary, credit to the Radnor police to making sure there was no threat. We found a note in the bathroom that said someone's going to go around and stab everyone. The Radnor police made us put all our backpacks there. They had to check our backpacks. And when they decided it was safe, we were allowed to go back and get our backpacks. But yet, when someone, an adult for that matter, stands up here and says to someone, you should be shot, and threatens them and calls them a foul name, and nothing's going to be done, but yet students younger, in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, you are going to ruin their entire lives. I'm sorry, but it's just wrong, and I really hope that you take that into consideration.
Good evening, Tony Bailey, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Just a reminder that in my home rule charter, they have like a little diagram, and it says voter at the top of what I call the food chain, and then we have the Board of Commissioners and, you know, the Ethics Board. But that says to me, it's the voter that we voted you all in to represent us. What I keep hearing is a clear representation of some of your own agenda and what you feel should happen, not your community, not Radnor Township. First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, that's just a very small snippet of the Constitution of the United States of America, but an extremely critical in the context of this forum. I have a friend who is a retired U.S. Marshal. After Mr. Nagel made that comment, someone shoot you, I asked him, because I was very upset about it. We have people watching TV, we have copycatters all over the United States and elsewhere that see this kind of stuff going on, and they think, oh, sounds good to me. They could stake themselves out at Mr. Sherry's house, think it's a good idea. People do this on a routine basis. I was deeply offended that no one, maybe one or two commissioners, thought that this was serious. Terroristic threat, as what Mr. Quinn gave to me, is under Title 18, Section 2706, Chapter 27, Section 06. It goes to say it's an offense, and with the intent to terrorize another. Clearly, if somebody said to me, someone shoot her, I would take that very seriously. I would contact the police. I would think that that would be the judicious thing to do under the circumstance. And for someone not to take action, I don't know what happened in Mr. Sherry's case, but I'm just saying what I would have done if that had happened to me. It was deeply troubling, considering in early December, I had gotten up here, I think it was December 8th and then maybe the 15th. December 8th, I addressed the lack of civility put forth by some of the commissioners that sit on this board towards the residents. The abusive language, the behavior, meted out, the lack of civility, rather harsh behavior, trying to silence, censor the residents who should be here as voters. This is their forum. This is their chance to get to tell you what they like or what they don't like. And they kind of expect reasonably that maybe you'll listen to them and act on their behalf. In close, Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are Anger and Courage. Anger of the way things are, and the courage to see that they do not remain the way they are. St. Augustine, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ken Rothweil. I live at 30 Northwoods Road, Radnor. I've lived in this township for 20 years, and this is my first board meeting. So for me, it was important to come out. I'm a trial lawyer, and we kind of pride ourselves on fairness and making processes fair. I've done it for 35 years. I've fought in courtrooms all over this state, all over New Jersey, all over New York. And what I heard, what happened at that December 8th board meeting, quite honestly, outraged me. Outraged me because for someone to utter those words, "someone shoot me," is outrageous. It's also legally actionable, and you should know that. Let's suppose Mr. Sherry went out, and I believe these proceedings are telecast. Let's suppose Mr. Sherry went out from this meeting, and one of the constituents in the town actually shot him. A lawyer like me would sue this board, both individually in your individual capacities and as a board as a whole. And good luck trying to beat us on that one. That's what I would do. I've done it before. I would do it again, especially in the face of this board taking no action to censure the person who said it. You have an obligation to this community and to each other to do that. Now, that's a legal opinion, and I'll charge you nothing for that legal opinion. But I can tell you that who you should listen to is that senior student from Radnor. Where is she? If you want an internship in my office, contact me tomorrow. I'll hire you in a second. It takes a lot of guts to get up here and talk to you guys. Not for me, because I do this for a living, but for her to do that. Think about how important it was for her to get up and stand before you and say the things that she said. Because we need to listen to the young people, and to her, it was an outrage. The rest of us can yell about it, but it's most important to her. And think about what she said. If some student had said that in the junior high, they would have been suspended the next day, probably without due process. Just the allegation alone, because that's what happens in our communities today. They'd have been suspended. There should be, on behalf of this board, a zero tolerance when it comes to any type of threat. I can tell you, in my capacity as a lawyer, I served as president of the Philadelphia Trial Lawyers. Of all of the most aggressive, ambitious trial lawyers in Philadelphia, I served as their president. 3 years later, I served as president of all the trial lawyers in Pennsylvania. And I held meetings like this all the time, with nothing but 50 to 60 to 70 lawyers in the room. You can imagine what those meetings were like. But I'll tell you one thing that I demanded: civility and non-threatening behavior. And I had friends of mine that violated that rule. And I threw them out, and I threw some of them off the board, because that's not what we were about. But that's the issue before you now, because one of your colleagues has violated that very tenet. And I suppose he's your friend, he's your colleague. So what? Your duty is higher than that. You were elected not to be friends, but you were elected to serve the public. He now has violated that public trust. The motion to censure is a valid motion. I would ask you as a constituent to vote on that motion and to vote to censure Mr. Nagel. Thank you.
All right, so you know that's the end of public participation. I would like to announce that we had an executive session before this meeting where we discussed the personnel matters, litigation matters, and real estate matters. Commissioners, before us we have the consent agenda. Is there any items you'd like to remove? The staff has asked that we remove item D and not vote on that this evening. Is there any other items commissioners would like to remove? Any member?
Yes, item P and item S.
Any member of the public want to remove any items? Can I have a motion to approve the consent?
Good evening, Jim Schneller. I'm back.
And Harry Potter? Is this Harry Potter?
It is indeed. The township has no business, not an iota of business, giving a cent to any kind of promotion of witchcraft. Thank you.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to approve the consent agendas with items D, P, and S removed?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Elaine, second it? Any public, commission discussion, public discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Consent agenda passes. Can I have a motion to approve Resolution 2015-31?
I move we approve 2015-31.
You have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I just wanted to get a details on this, another vehicle. We had 4 vehicles for the police 2 meetings ago, and what's this vehicle? And what's its purpose?
Commissioner Booker, over on the side. This vehicle is to replace one of the vehicles in the community development fleet. It is part of the capital improvement plan that we update our vehicles on an ongoing basis. This is the 3rd vehicle in the fleet for community development that is to be replaced as part of the update process.
So how many vehicles do we have for community development?
We have a total of 5 vehicles. 2 already have been replaced, 1 last year, 1 the year before. This one is scheduled, and we have 1 in each of the next 2 years.
And how much is a new vehicle?
The budgeted amount was $28,000. The purchase price of this vehicle is $26,705 for the vehicle.
Is there any other alternatives we have besides buying a new vehicle for, I guess this is for driving around the township, right? I mean, it's not a huge township. So how many, is this, how many miles are on the car that it's replacing?
I don't have the exact number, but I believe it's somewhere around 80,000 miles.
Were there any other, consider buying a used car? I guess these are all new cars?
Yes, these are all new cars. I believe it's the policy that we're replacing the older cars that are having problems and starting to break down with a newer fleet. I believe the expected timeline for this in service is 10 to 12 years.
Any other questions? Any public comment? All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Passes 5 to 1. Can I have a motion for Resolution 2015-28, amending the 215 wage and salary schedule to reflect a change in position in the police department?
I'll move to approve Resolution 2015-28.
Second?
Second.
Comments? Yes, this resolution is increasing the patrol traffic safety employee from a rate of $40.70 per hour to $43.95, or actually 96 cents an hour. My question was, is this mandated by the contract, and if so, why do we need to vote on this?
Commissioner, that is correct. It is by the contract. And to, again, make sure that the board is aware, because when the budget was approved, the officer was not in the traffic unit, so you approved a budget by the salary schedule, and it was not, and to make sure that the board was aware of this change, and also to make it transparent, so that if anyone was tracking that, you would notice, and we wanted to make sure that the public and the board was aware of this change being made, so that the board would approve that change, but it is made by contract.
So is the vote that we're taking a ratification of the increase, or it's not, again, it's not necessary, or not, by approving the contract back in last year, or I guess it was an addendum to the existing contract, that this was built into the salary schedule, and there's really nothing for us to vote on, is that correct?
No, we just wanted you to amend the 2015 wage and salary schedule to reflect that change. Because what you approved with the 2015 schedule, this is different, so we wanted to make sure we brought this back to amend that.
Any other commissioner comment, public comment? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Abstain.
Passes 5 with 1 abstention. Next, we have Pet Value Certificate of Appreciation for supporting the Radnor Township K-9 Unit, and Elaine Schaefer, head of our Public Safety Committee, will.
And I'm going to ask Lieutenant Flanagan to join Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you.
Mrs. English, come up from Pet Value. As you know, we're under a 2-year trial period for the Radnor K-9, and we solicited different businesses to help support us. Obviously, selling it to a Pet Value store is a pretty easy task, but Pet Value and Mrs. English really stepped up to the plate by helping us with the fundraiser. They also have hosted a time where citizens could meet the dogs and go over it. So it's with great appreciation that we present this to Pet Value for their outstanding support of the police department and the Radnor K-9 unit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Chief, letters of commendation by the police department?
Thank you, sir. In addition to the two lieutenants, I would ask Officers Ken Pyree, William Durr, and Brian Bell to come forward, please. Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners and staff, I'd just like to say the reason that these three officers are being honored is for a life-saving action that they've taken. It was on January 15th, and I will just briefly read you a summary of what happened. And it was on Thursday, January 15th at around 5 p.m. Officers Pyree, Durr, and Bell were dispatched to a residence on Applegate Lane in Bryn Mawr. There was an 83-year-old male victim who was experiencing an asthma attack. Unfortunately, this individual then went into cardiac arrest. The officers had to begin immediate CPR, and they were able to resuscitate the individual and save his life. So based on those heroic acts, I would like to commend Officers Pyree, Durr, and Bell with a letter of commendation. Congratulations. That's the first of many for Brian Bell. He's one of my rookies. The other two are veterans. Thank you, gentlemen. Now I would like to bring up Officer Metzler and Officer Gallagher for their letter of commendation. I know many of you probably saw this on the news already. Everybody remembers the ice storm we had back in January. And first of all, we're going to honor Officer Metzler because Officer Metzler spent numerous hours assisting the Pennsylvania State Police on the Blue Route, helping them recover victims, render first aid, and assist with the accidents. Officer James Gallagher, another one of my rookie officers here in Radnor, who's also a second-generation Radnor officer, and I believe his dad's in the back right there, a retired Radnor police officer. What Officer Jim Gallagher was nothing less than heroic, to say the least. He was actually heading home, and while he was heading home, he noticed a bunch of crashes on the Blue Route. So he pulled over in his personal car, and he began to render assistance to the Pennsylvania State Police and to the victims. While he was doing that, a tractor-trailer jackknifed, and two vehicles went underneath the tractor-trailer. I'll try to be a little careful with my language here, but there were three individuals trapped, of which there was no hope for one. But Officer Gallagher was able to rescue the wife, and he was able to rescue the child by actually cutting the child out of a car seat by helping to save the child's life. So it's with great honor. I would like to honor and commend Officer Metzler and Officer Gallagher for true heroic acts by the Radnor Police. Thank you. Thank you, sir. One more here. Oh.
The appointments to our various boards and commissions. John Fisher.
Thanks, Bill. I'll let the room clear out for a moment here. I'll move to make the following appointments. Linda Berman to the Civil Service Committee, Jim Doyle to the Parks and Rec Committee, Martin Dwyer to the CARFAC Committee, Charles Falcone to the Planning Commission, Janelle Snyder to the Harb Committee.
Have a second? Second. Commissioner comment, public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 And we have a vacancy
Passes,
on the,
6-0.
sorry about that. We have a vacancy on the RHM Sewer Authority. So those who would be interested in serving on that committee, please send your letter of interest to the Township Manager at 301 Ivan Avenue, Radnor Township, Wayne, Pennsylvania 19087. RHM is the Radnor Haverford Marple Sewer Authority, and they govern the sewer system from Radnor Township all the way down to its terminus.
Our presentation of the Township Building Rain Garden Project.
Good evening. I'm Dan Meyer with on the Environmental Advisory.
Don't pull that mic towards you. Thanks.
Dan Meyer on the Environmental Advisory Council. I'm here just to give a brief presentation on a project we've got coming up in the next couple months. We applied for a WREN grant, and that is the Water Resources Education Network. It's a program of the League of Women Voters. They offer grants every year that are really targeted to educate the public about stormwater issues, water quality issues. And my colleague Ann Poulin's here. She put together a great team of partners. You can see a long list there of a lot of township organizations and even some privates. And the idea is to construct a rain garden on the township building property, as well as conduct a workshop to educate the citizens about how they might do so on their own properties. WREN offers grants up to $5,000, and we were able to get one for $3,000. So that'll be going towards soil for the rain garden, some plants, and then some educational signage. And just wanted to talk a little bit about the location. You can see up in the upper left there is Ivan Avenue, where you come into the township. You drive over Ithan Creek, and then if you made a left to come to the police station, off on your left-hand side, as part of the parking improvements that are planned, there's going to be 4 parallel parking spaces. I've got them cross-hatched there below the green blob, which represents the garden. And so the idea is that the runoff from these new parking spaces, which otherwise would just flow straight into Ithan Creek, will be captured in this rain garden, and the water will infiltrate into the soil. A little bit of a close-up here. I had hoped when I first saw the plan that we might capture about a 1/4 acre of land into that rain garden. The little segment at the lower right that goes off into the police station driveway, there's an inlet there, so that piece will not get captured. But we're still looking at a good chunk of impervious area draining to that, and most importantly, those new parking spaces that otherwise would have flowed right into the creek. I did want to just to give you an idea of how this is all going to happen, I just want to talk briefly about a project that Steve Norsini and the Public Works Group helped us out with back in 2013. This is in Cowan Park over in North Wayne. It was a new restroom building put in, and you can actually see in the lower left there, or the lower left of the bottom slide, there's sort of some ponding water there. So this was targeted as a good opportunity to capture some runoff. So I put together, I'm an engineer, I do this all the time. I put together just some simple sketches to help Steve's guys out, figure out what needed to be done. Public Works then went out and dug a hole probably 2 to 3 feet deep. You fill it with a special soil mix. It's got a lot of organic material in it, but also a lot of sand to help with drainage. Chanticleer, who's also on our WREN grant this year, donated 200 plants and gave us an idea of how to lay out the different plants for the best aesthetic look. And there's a whole variety of plants that you can use in rain gardens. They're ideally all native, so they take little maintenance. And then this was in April of 2013. Again, Steve's guys delivered some grade A skunk hollow leaf mulch, and first that was spread over the new sand area, the soil area. And then it was just a great turnout. It was a lot of people from the immediate neighborhood came, and in about 2 hours, we planted about 200 plants. Looked a little anemic the first day, but by the end of the summer, plants were about 2 to 3 feet high. My wife and I would go over maybe once a week and just pull some weeds, water it a little bit. Didn't take too much to keep it going that first summer. And then after the second year, with almost no maintenance, the plants, once they've established their roots, they just really took off. So it's a nice little amenity in the park there now. These I just took a couple weekends ago. We've left the plants standing through the winter, provides a little bit of wildlife cover and some drama to the landscape. And then in about a month or so, Steve's guys will just come in and weed whack that all down to the ground, and then it just all comes back. No real maintenance involved. So lastly, I just wanted to announce a couple important dates we've got coming up related to the grant. March 14th at the library, we're having a workshop. We've got 2 experts, one on rain gardens, one on native plantings. We'll be giving a presentation and lots of materials on how to do this on your own property. And then on April 25th, we're hoping the weather lets us get the parking project done, and then we'll be ready to do the planting similar to what we did at Cowan. So we're hoping the commissioners aren't doing anything on those days and can come out and support us. I think this is a great thing. We know, I've lived in the township for 28 years. I know the stormwater problems here. I work them every day elsewhere in the state. These kind of small solutions, it's kind of what you have left to do in a pretty much urbanized township like we live in. There's no big silver bullets where you do 1 or 2 things and the problem goes away. These kind of little green interventions can really go a long way.
Dan, what kind of plants are they? These are specialized to perform transpiration at a more rapid rate than other plants?
I'm no plant expert. I can tell you they're native Pennsylvania plants, and so they just thrive in our climate, in our rainfall patterns, in our soils. So, many of them might almost be, I don't want to use the word weeds, but they're just a plant that really thrives in the southeast Pennsylvania environment.
In damp soils?
Right, and they also can take being inundated with water and then going for long periods without water.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to the EAC for spearheading this. And it's, to me, a very exciting project as an illustration of the direction we need to go in. And I hope that this project eventually gets some signage with it so that our residents, when they're parking their cars, can walk by and get an understanding of what happens, how you can counteract the impervious coverage that you're putting in. Did you say, is Chanticleer going to donate some materials for this?
They're on our grant to donate some trees, but I was just speaking with Ann tonight that we want to go back. We're thinking that really what we need are plants and not trees in this area.
Exactly.
So I've got a good friend who works there. I'm hoping I can pull some strings.
Well, again, thank you for your work on this and for procuring the funding for it, which is really great. And again, I hope that a lot of people pay attention to this because this is the direction we need to go in. Little areas, every little square inch we can get, the more we can get the water to come in the ground and not into the drains, the better.
Yep. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ann, anything else? Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Not really sure how to get. Thank you.
All right, we have recognition of the Radnor Hotel for the daddy-daughter dance.
Good evening. I'd like to take an opportunity to invite Commissioner Booker down as well for this award. I appreciate the opportunity this evening to recognize the Radnor Hotel for their generous support and their presenting sponsorship for the 2015, which was the 4th annual Daddy-Daughter Dance that was held on Friday, February 6th. This was a tremendous event, and the Radnor Hotel provided an exquisite ambiance for the event that was very sophisticated for the sold-out event that consisted of over 200 daddies and their beautiful daughters. So with me is Senior Vice President and General Manager Lou Prevost. So I want to take an opportunity to present him with this gorgeous plaque and say thank you on behalf of Radnor Township.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Thanks, Lou. Keep up the good work. Recreation and Community Program Department presentation on 2014 department highlights.
Jim, if you could bring up the presentation. Good evening once again, Commissioners. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to share with you a presentation that I had given to the Parks and Recreation Board back in January at their January meeting. What it offered was a great opportunity to take a step through 2014 and go through a lot of the highlights that had occurred. I'll start off by talking about the community events that took place in 2014, of course being one of the Recreation and Community Programming Department's largest service components of its department and the delivery. Of course, comes the events, and in the last 3 to 5 years, we've had significant growth that has occurred within that area of service delivery. We've been able to develop and offer to the community a number of events that have ranged in large events like the Wheels of Wayne, the Great Fall Harvest and Great Pumpkin Patch event, the Willows Concert and Fireworks Celebration, of course the Truck Zoo. A lot of those events have a diverse appeal for families. Then we have a lot of the smaller events that are geared more towards smaller populations, like the Daddy-Daughter Dance, of course, that we just heard about, and of course the Wayne Senior Center Active Aging event that happens. One of the things that's consistent with those events, not only in developing new traditions for Radnor Township, but we also strive every year with those events to develop them more uniquely and better and bigger, of course, every year. One of the finest examples of that, of course, is in 2014, we received a state award from the Pennsylvania Recreation Park Society for the 2013 Fall Harvest and Great Pumpkin Patch event. It was a tremendous opportunity for us to stand in the spotlight within the state and receive that recognition and show a lot of the great things that we've been doing here in Radnor Township. The number of community events has over doubled, of course, throughout the last 4 years of our delivery with the community events. We're up to about 23 that we delivered, of course, in 2014. Don't let the quantity fool you. We do concentrate, of course, on the high quality and the delivery of those events. So throughout those years, it hasn't just been a compounding of offering more events, but rather it's been refining the events that are delivered and changing and swapping in and changing events that, of course, attendance has gone down in or have not had as much appeal as others do, and switching them out with events that have a lot of a greater range of appeal. In 2015, of course, we have another hearty lineup scheduled of about 20 events. One of the things that's very important to recognize from 2014 is the community's response to the events that we've delivered. Nearly 19,000 participants took part in all the events that occurred throughout the course of 2014. Just from 2013 alone, that was a 48% increase. And then, of course, since 2010, when the events really began to grow, it's about a 471% increase. So the community's enthusiasm has been outstanding, and it's something that we recognize. One of the biggest events that's received feedback has been the Santa's Delivery. It's the motorcade that we take out into the community and deliver with Santa Claus. Pre-registered gifts, of course, to all the households that register. That program alone, we saw over 75% increase from 2013 into 2014. And one of the unique things about this event is that there's a lot of intense staff collaboration. We had 4 motorcades that went into the community with over 40 employees who volunteered their time, along with some of their siblings and relatives that came out with us and children to help in that cause. And by far, it's been one of the biggest events that we've received so much feedback, emails, phone calls from members of the community about how much enthusiasm and enjoyment that has brought them. Sorry. So the community events have been just as much about the partnerships that we have been able to create with the community organizations in the delivery of many of the events, as it has been about, of course, the success of the events. In 2014, we had 14 partners that we worked with very closely. Of course, that was growth from 10 organizations that we worked with in 2013. And the relationships that we've been able to develop with those businesses, or with those organizations, has been beneficial in a lot of different areas, not just to the delivery of the event, but into other areas of service to what they do, as well as what the township does. So it's been a positive for everybody. And they have extreme enthusiasm in being part of a lot of the events along with us. The collaborations that we've been able to endeavor with regards to the events has extended also into many, many businesses within not only Radnor Township, but within the near region. In 2014, we had over 81 sponsorship contributors from an in-kind nature. So sponsorships take the format of monetary, and they take the format of in-kind. And what this is basically different food vendors that we have that participate with us, restaurants that have their food that they bring to the events. We've had the Philadelphia Phillies who've provided tickets that we've been able to give out as prizes for events such as the night at the ballpark. It's been we have a fitness center in town that just recently opened up and reached out to us in wanting to be able to offer their services. So they offered us a prize as part of the manager's challenge for the health and wellness and promotion as a free membership for 1 year to obviously build the exposure within their business by participating in that event. From 2013 moving to 2014, we've seen a 42% increase overall for the amount of contributions that have been made. I should say contributors that have been made. This wouldn't count numbers such as we have Hearst Potato Chips, for example. They have provided us with over 130 cases of chips over the course of the year, but we're counting hers as one, so it would be as a contributor. So just not to confuse what the numbers actually entail there. Switching gears just to the monetary sponsorships that we received, we had over 52 of those in 2014. This was a number that has been stable from 13 to 14. As you can see here, we topped off at about $63,000 in sponsorship dollar contributions that have been made. And then as a dollar amount, you can see how this has changed throughout the years. There's a range to what folks give us. You know, some give little amounts, some give a lot amounts. But at the end of the day, all of the sponsorship contributions that are made, they take a very business and organization-focused approach. Because for us, it's not just about the money and what it's able to lend to the event through the entertainment that we're able to provide, but it's also about the exposure for the businesses and what they get out of it. So that's where areas like the advertising, the face-to-face outreach that they have at the events, and the visibility is so key and so critical. Because for us, it's about making sure that, especially our local businesses here in Radnor, they get the opportunity to have the exposure and have the marketing benefits that benefit them and that work for them. But all in all, we of course get questions, how's the money spent? It goes towards the entertainment, the bands. People, I'm sure, have seen the fireworks go up all over town for different events throughout the year. And those, of course, are items that we wouldn't be otherwise able to do without the sponsorship contributions that are made. And of course, the dollars help defray a lot of the indirect costs that are associated with the events as well. Switching gears just briefly, the programming on behalf of the department has always served as the traditional backbone, but with the increase in the events over the last 5 years, We haven't given quite as much attention to that area of service delivery as we used to if you go back 10 years, where we were delivering programs that were exceeding 200 over the course of a year. We're still maintaining the delivery of about 100 great quality programs over the course of a year. Of course, maintaining the staple programs like Radnor Day Camp and the Radnor Youth Basketball Program, of course. A lot of our concentration has been on trying to fulfill regions of service delivery that complement other organizations and other businesses throughout town, so that we're not trying to double up on efforts and the things that we offer, but rather complement the things that are happening and going on. We also have concentrated heavily on a lot of partnerships to the development of how we deliver our programs over the course of a year, working with a lot of service providers that specialize and can help increase the success of the programming so that it's successful and we're not spending a lot of time doing things that are not going to have a chance, without having that partnership delivery. One of the things we get questioned on a lot is online registration. Our online registration for recreational programming has been inconsistent, I'll say, over the last few years. One of the goals that we have for 2015 and headed into 2016 is going to make sure that we have one consolidated method for online registration in terms of how that funnels through the township, and then, of course, is then integrated throughout the township's finance department. The discount ticket program that we deliver, we've seen since its inception in 2012, an increase of about 30%. It's been outstanding for us. It's not a huge revenue generator, but it is something that has been highly regarded by the residents. That's the opportunity for discount tickets to the local cinemas and local amusement parks and ski destinations. We saw in 2014, we sold 731 of those alone, and it's great for us because it gets people in the door, and it gives us the opportunity to share a lot of the other things that we're doing on behalf of the department. Last but not least, of course, is the volume of park and facility improvement projects that have been worked on in the last year to 2 years with the help and the guidance, of course, of this board and our department's inner workings with a lot of the administration and the staff, with the Public Works Department and the Township Manager. We have seen a lot of great park and facility improvement projects. They've either completed or they've progressed substantially, and that's been a great accomplishment, something that we look to continue working forward on into 2015. In 2014, one of the biggest projects I'm sure you all see very often is the Enke Park Playground. It is a newly designed and colorful playground that's different from a lot of our other ones that were built in the mid-1990s. It offers a poured surface play area, which is different from the wood carpet that is out there and installed on a lot of the previously developed playgrounds. It'll have a longer life, and it'll be something that obviously offers a lot of the same safety features. We worked with Play World Systems, which is a leader in the industry, particularly when it comes to green compliance and safety compliances. And it's also a system that's made in the U.S. and made in PA. So I want to take an opportunity just to thank the board, of course, under your support and your guidance has enabled us to be able to make a lot of great achievements in 2014, something we wish to continue on into the new year. And so on behalf of our department and all of our staff members, all three of them, I want to take an opportunity to thank you for the brief presentation tonight.
We want to thank you, and being in the real estate business, the number one reason for moving into Radnor is the schools, but the number two reason is our recreation department, and it helped keep property values high in Radnor, and so we appreciate all the hard work you do and all the fine services you provide to this community. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Spengler.
Thank you, Tammy. I want to just say add something, because in the report that you gave to the Parks and Rec Board was a little bit more detailed, and something struck me in that report that I want to share with the public, because I think it's really impressive, good news. It was too much detail for you to include tonight. And that is the success of our Radnor Memorial Park. You may recall a few years ago we had a very protracted community discussion trying to decide what to do with that park. This is the park that's across the street from Radnor Elementary School off of King of Prussia Road. And it was in very poor condition, and we were approached by a private school to partner together that they would fix it up, put a artificial turf surface on it, we would come to an agreement with some time that they would have it and the other time that we would have it, and they would pay for all the improvements, and then they would pay a yearly rent. And we had a very long discussion at the community level, not sure whether to go this route. It was one of our very first private-public attempts at making something work to bring a township asset back up. And now it's been a couple of years, and it's been extraordinary what has happened. We went from, before this agreement and these improvements were put in, about 300 hours a month, 300 hours a year of usage on that field. Last year, or 2013, it was at about 1,000 or 1,100. And then the lights went, this is our usage of the field, and then the lights went in and it went up to over 1,300 hours a year that our residents get to use that park. And it makes it the most heavily used park in our park system. So I kind of wanted to share that because it was sort of as a community, we did a little soul searching of whether we wanted to try this out, the public-private thing, and whether it would work or not. And I think now we have the experience a few years in to really see, it really did work out for us. And now we have this great park that we're getting an extraordinary amount of use out of. And I think most residents who are involved in using our parks are very excited and supportive of it. So thank you for bearing with us while we went through that process. And then thank you to the community for using the park. So thanks a lot.
Well, I think we ought to mention Tammy's name. It's Tammy Cohen. You didn't introduce yourself. I think it's because of modesty.
Sorry.
People are in the audience here may not know you, and people looking in from home may not know you, but you are our Director of Parks and Recreation, Tammy Cohen.
Yes, well done, Tammy.
Good job.
Thank you, Commissioners.
So I just want to say that I plan to highlight each department each month, but I saw your presentation, and I appreciate you doing it because I could never have done so well with the information that you gave us. But I just want to emphasize that your department is actually, I want to argue, one of the smaller departments, yet you provide an enormous amount of activity in this township. We're talking about thousands of people that use your services. And it spans all ages. So I've taken part over the years in different things. My kids have. I think every family in this township has had a touch point with Parks and Rec, what we used to call Parks and Rec. So Tammy, thank you from all of us for your hard work, and clearly your leadership in this department has made a world of difference. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to point out the hard work and efforts, of course, too, of our two other employees, Laura Huff, who is our Recreation Program Coordinator, and Megan Sullivan, of course, who is our Program Supervisor. They work very hard, of course, on behalf of the community, and I want to make sure that I point out their names as well, as they deal very heavily, of course, with a lot of folks on a day-to-day basis. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, public safety.
I'd like to introduce Ordinance 2015-02 for a handicapped parking space on Ekas Avenue.
I'll second that.
Commissioner comment, public comment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 6-0.
Next, we have an update on the deer culling program for 2014 to 2015. And I think we're getting a presentation to that end.
Yes, Commissioner Schaefer, it's going to be Bill Gallagher, who is our Parking and Animal Complaint Supervisor, and he has a brief PowerPoint along with Lieutenant Flanagan.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Wanted to talk about the deer management program, and it's more or less an overview of the whole thing, because we don't know where we are unless we know where we've been. So if you bear with me a couple minutes. It was actually 2 weeks ago, Sue Jones from engineering came over, and she had a big stack of papers, and she said, "Billy, this is old deer stuff. You want to see it?" So I said, "Sure." So I'm rummaging through, come up with a deer presentation they did many, many years ago. And while rummaging through, I found a letter. And in that letter was everything that we had ever done on our first presentation. It was Mrs. Thurman who wrote about her vegetation being devastated, her saying that, the more cars are coming, going to have the more accidents. And then she ended with Lyme disease. And I'm saying, holy smokes, everything that we said, she had said many, many years ago. And the end of her letter is the number of deer in the township is no longer a mere problem. It's become a crisis. I trust that the commissioners will not delay in finding a solution. Sincerely, Dorothy Thurman, April 4th, 1994. So, we fast forward. 2012, actually we started in 2011 with the chief sending me a memo from the manager. And we were instructed to conduct a study of deer in the township. We looked at every single method we could figure out. And eventually we teamed up with the United States Department of Agriculture, Wildlife Services, and a formal report was completed actually 2 years ago today. The report documented that the average deer population in the township was 101 deer per square mile. And that was before fawning, that made 1487 in the township. And before fawning, you got to understand, is you're expecting another 20% increase. So 20% on top of 1487. So what we did is we hired the USDA and we removed 250 deer from the township via sharpshooters in the fall and winter of 2012 and 13. We also teamed up with the Chester Valley Deer Management Association at no cost to the township. This was monitored and still is by Sergeant Joseph Pino, who reported that year a total of 64 deer were culled. And that's using only private property and completed during the authorized hunting season. So the 3 months of hunting season, they did 64 deer. So we moved forward to 2014, and we removed 300 deer, 50 deer on township property and 250 on private property throughout the township. That's using the USDA again. Chester Valley Deer Management, under the direction of Steve Grabusky, who is their leader, so to speak, did another outstanding job, and they took out 57 deer, only again on private properties during hunting season. So we go to this year. Deer surveys were conducted by Wildlife Service during October of 2014, and the estimated average deer density in the township is 43.5 deer per square mile. So we went from 101 where we started to 62, and now down to 43.5. So far this year, 91 deer have been removed from Radnor Township via sharpshooting. And another 26 were removed by Steve Grabusky in Chester Valley during the hunting season. So everybody always asks me, well, what happens next? What happens to the deer, once they're harvested? Well, every deer removed from the township by the USDA is donated for charitable food distribution. The Pennsylvania Game Commission picks up a portion of the deer and delivers them to people who request them in southeastern Pennsylvania. The remaining deer are transported to a local food processor and the meat delivered to the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. And since the inception, the township has donated more than 17,800 pounds of venison, and that's not counting the 91 from this year so far. January 24th of this year, the chief got a letter Radnor Township Police Department, thank you for the 75 pounds of ground venison we received through Gerald Check, Wildlife Control Officer, on Friday, January 23rd, 2015. It was delivered to the Daily Bread Community Food Pantry in Schwenksville. Your benevolence is very much appreciated by the clients. And that about says it all. And we get them all the time now. It's incredible the way this is actually working out for us. And a lot of people like to see the numbers. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. I want to talk a second about the USDA. We got a letter from them, and I don't know if hopefully it got to your packets. I don't know if it did or not, but I'll highlight the letter. And they said that collaborative efforts between the USDA Wildlife Service and Radnor Township have accounted for a rapid reduction of the deer population in Radnor over the last 3 years. This collaborative effort has enabled the Radnor Township Deer Program to be one of the most successful in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The Radnor Township Deer Program continues to reduce deer densities, thereby minimizing damages related to deer vehicle collisions, forest regeneration, species diversity, and other human health and safety concerns. And now if I can get to the numbers. As you see, in 2012, when we started, the red is deer that are killed by vehicles. The blue is just deer that we get reports of. Some are on fences, all kind of stuff. But you can see after the first year of shooting, 84 to 44 to 28. Unbelievably significant decrease. And as everybody knows, when you're driving around a township, especially if you're going down Bryn Mawr Avenue, Conestoga Road, you're certainly not seeing them like you used to. So let's see if we can put that into a dollar figure. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, they came up with an average animal strike claim, which they say is $2,730. So you figure in 2012, just in our accidents would have been 229,320. 2013, bang, all the way down to 120,000. And then last year, 76,000. If we reach our goal this year, we will be down to 29 deer per square mile. The overall goal in the 5-year plan was get down to 20. So we're well on our way. And before I end, I'd just like to thank Mr. Z, the Chief, Andy Block, Sergeant Smith, who started this with me, Jimmy Acavino and Chris Canazzi, Steve Norsini and Mark Dominic, and Bud Highland and Timmy McGee of the Highway Department, because everybody works on this, and they continue to. And basically, without Lieutenant Flanagan and Sergeant Pino, we would be flat on our back. But the program has just been incredible, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much for your work and for your results. This started when I was up on Camp Woods Road, and a fellow at the end of the street had complained about deer. I drove down Camp Woods Road and 20 deer walked in front of me. I was shocked. There were that many deer on Camp Woods Road coming off Notre Dame Academy, and they are a hazard. I know when I first started as a commissioner back in the 90s, someone said, we got to get rid of the deer, and I said, well, I'm not going to be the one that kills Bambi.
Exactly.
I mean, it was a different mindset then, but with all the accidents we have, it is very dangerous. People get killed hitting deer. Unfortunately, I don't think we've had any in Radnor, but it still is quite a trauma when your car is involved with a deer, and getting that down as much as we can has been the goal of this program. And of course, Elaine was the one that highlighted that with the number of incidents that she related in her ward. So we certainly appreciate all that you've done for the citizens of Radnor Township in this regard. And I wish you were the geese guy, too.
We're working on that. We actually really are.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
it is great news. It's been an extraordinary successful program. I want to also remember, we were told the first year there were 250 deer taken by the USDA with 251 shots. I'm sure that their record of
Absolutely.
professionalism
Hasn't changed a bit.
Hasn't changed a bit. So it is extraordinarily professional. But let's not forget, this was not an easy program to put through. We had a lot of contentious meetings.
Certainly.
And, you know, in the end, that year, 2010, when we put it through, we had 113 collisions that were reported.
Right.
So, you know, I would have people come up to me all the time. My daughter swerved and took out she almost got in an accident, but she didn't, so they didn't report it. And that was happening on top of the 113 incidents that were reported, the collisions. So we did the right thing. We're on the right track. We so appreciate the professionalism with which our staff and the USDA has run this program. It's really, it is something it's a model for other communities that are having this problem.
Yep.
So
Mr.
thank
President,
you for your work.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to recognize Bill Gallagher and Joe Pinto. They do a tremendous job. They're out there in the cold temperatures at night. The USDA does an excellent job. I want to thank the board for your support of that. I think one of the statistics that came up, if it was last year or the year before, there were 250 deer taken. There were 251 shots that they took. But I know there were a number of times where there were the opportunities to take the shots, and they didn't because of public safety. And I think that's a big part of this, that the concern of because how close the areas are. And then also I'd like to recognize Austin Hepburn, one of our residents who, one of our deer, I call experts there, who was able to consult with us through the early part of this program and continues that we have, you know, a resident that has some knowledge and experience in our area also to be able to help us. So I just want to recognize him as well. But really, for you guys, what you do with the baiting and all that takes place, all of that information. I know it wasn't an easy decision for the board, but I was very surprised at the number of residents that came out to those meetings, of how adamant they were about Lyme disease and ticks and that. I was very surprised of the number of residents in town that actually had Lyme disease and that from a lot of the deer. I was shocked at the comments we received from the residents at these public meetings. So again, thank you.
Thanks. I have a few comments also. Again, also supportive. The anecdotal feedback that I'm getting from residents is that they believe the statistics that you just showed. So that's always helpful to me when I get feedback from residents that they believe that it was a worthwhile investment. Bob, you mentioned Austin. I think one of his contributions was to connect us to the crossbow hunters. So in the absence of that, I mean, that's 100 deer at $300 a deer that we didn't have to pay. So he does deserve credit for that. And I think we talked about this in 2010. We want to wean ourselves away from the USDA. I don't know when that is, and you'll tell us when. But at some point, I mean, I want to move it in the direction of private hunters keeping the herd at the level that we identified it. Yes.
That's our goal. I mean, that's.
If we have to start a conversation, in my opinion, about allowing the crossbow hunters on township property. Mm-hmm. There are places where the crossbow hunters can hunt safely. Part of this is the economics of the hunting, and part of it is their sport. There's people in Radnor that like hunting. They don't want to play wiffle ball or baseball. They like hunting, and I think it's appropriate for us to offer this to them. And I think we can do it safely based upon the conversations I've had with the people who represent the crossbow hunters. So I don't know if that point is now, but I think that has to be part of the solution, is at least that has to be part of the consideration for the upcoming solution.
I agree with you, and I think, Bill, like you said, we're almost getting to that number. That sounds like a great program for recreation. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, I the father-daughter dance.
I'm confident we can come up with something.
I would agree with that as well. Also, we talked about budget. How are we doing on budget right now? Is it a lump sum? I can't recall what the contract is. It lump sum, or is it by?
If I'm not mistaken, I think it's by deer, but I think because of with the work that Bill's done and Sergeant Pinto, I believe we're actually going to come in under budget because of how the USDA has worked with it. because I believe, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, there are some of the deer that the USDA keeps, and the state actually looks at some of these of how the deer, I know it sounds strange, of what the impact is, because some of these deer look like they've been hit by vehicles. And I think they are doing a study of how many of these deer are actually the deer car hits.
They'll take a certain number, like every 4 or 5 times we go out, they'll take a certain number and they'll take the deer. And also they get requests, like I said, from upstate where they just literally take the deer, and we don't have any overhead, so to speak, with the public works guys and that kind of stuff. So we do get money back on that.
Well, I would like to thank you for the program. I never would have expected when we started this in the beginning of 2012 that we would be up to the numbers where we are. And as I counted your annual numbers, kills, I have 788 total. And my question is, are we finished for this year? Or
No.
do we still have?
We still have some nights left.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you when.
You're not going to
No,
tell me
just
where?
kidding, I'll tell you.
That's fine, that's fine. So we'll do, we have so far this year 117, which is way down from prior years, and that's a reflection of our success.
Okay, absolutely. And we're pretty early in this year's, although it's not like it once was. They got to look.
It's harder.
Exactly.
Okay. Commissioner, also to that point, I think also there are numbers that the USDA, there are a number of them that they see that the numbers could be higher. It's the safety of the shot, too, that they have passed on a number of opportunities, but because of the safety issue, they do not take them.
There's no question about that.
Okay, thank you.
Great job, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, our next item under public safety is a discussion of a proposed new staff traffic committee protocol. It looks like we have Lieutenant Flanagan handling this, or?
Ask the Highway Patrol Unit to join me. Can you just bring that up on there? Chief, do you want to make an introduction? Or just go ahead. The beginning of this year, the manager and the chief met with the Highway Patrol Unit and wanted to discuss some goals, and particularly making the unit, which stands behind me, more efficient. For the community, these officers are sort of like the traffic detectives. They're very specialized officers who deliver quite a large variety of skills and capabilities, from evaluating very serious car accidents. We've had 2 very recent investigations, to the tree that was down where there was a fatality, to also things that to some may be very simple but very important to one street versus another, such as a stop sign study, or slowing cars down, or finding out that somebody's speeding on a particular street and what can we do. With all those responsibilities and duties, these officers get pulled in many directions. The chief and the manager asked us, how could we streamline that? And basically, we put a very quick presentation for the community and you. Make efficient the use of the Highway Patrol Unit, in particular to traffic surveys and traffic engineering. Those 2 are very time-consuming, and they really do take a lot of time from the officer, where they're not necessarily available to go out on the street, handle patrol, watch a stop sign that may be getting violated quite a bit, or a playground, or even a simple parking issue can be very frustrating. What we wanted to do is simply make a procedure that is very clear to the whole community, the commissioners and the township staff, on how to work better this year. Just real quickly, officers do on a daily basis speed checks, motor carrier safety inspections, motorcycle patrol, special enforcement zones, crash investigations, normal patrol response backing up other officers on big calls, safety inspections, and abandoned vehicle investigation. What we wanted to do this year, under the direction of Steve Norsini, work together in our staff traffic meeting, which meets once a month. We are the conduit for the citizens to meet township staff, Highway Patrol Unit, and potentially the traffic engineer at a later date, is to have the traffic engineer take more of a role in traffic calming, stop sign studies, traffic signal studies, crosswalk, sidewalk studies, speed limit studies, and any other items to be determined by staff traffic. Here's a real quick flow chart of how that would work. To the community, almost nothing would change, but we did work with Steve Norsini, who can explain our process once we were to hit something, is you would follow the normal chain of command. A letter would be sent to the chief of police, the manager, one of the commissioners. It would be forwarded through. The staff traffic would review it on its monthly meeting. Once we determine the level, it may be a simple fix. Our guys would initially go out because we're not going to waste any time for safety. We're immediately going to get out, make sure we're not missing something. If it's something simple, we'll address it. It'll be logged in the minutes, but it won't require the traffic engineer to be involved. If it does require a more involved process, we'll meet at that monthly staff traffic, we'll review with Mr. Norsini, and we will complete a form. The form you guys have. The manager asked us to have a very clear form that we would be able to prepare on the particular comments, and it would be brought before the commissioners, and they would consider that. And if it met the requirements that the commissioners wanted it reviewed by the traffic engineer, Steve Norsini would proceed to meet with Ms. Kaminsky and conduct the respective evaluation. Steve can give you just a little bit of a breakdown of how that would look should we go with this procedure.
Thank you, Lieutenant. So just real quickly, the lieutenant laid out some items to be considered by the traffic engineer, again, to alleviate staff traffic when needed of those duties. So in Amy Kaminsky's letter to me about the reappointment, I asked her to provide some set flat fees for certain traffic engineering work. So the reason for that was if at staff traffic there was a recommendation and went to the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Commissioners could, at a given meeting, make a determination of what they would like to have done, and they would know the cost of it up front. That's for certain projects, from traffic calming analysis, signal warrant analysis, ADA requests, traffic counts, and always stop warrant analysis. And part of that is, so Public Works would set up the speed boards to get the speed and counts. Police downloads that. That's what we give to Gilmore, and they could provide that service for that fixed fee. That does not include design of solutions necessarily, but that is to do these different analyses if the board should so wish to do so.
So my question when I read through this was just clarification of, so when a resident comes to us or you at staff traffic and sets forth the issue, that initial step that always happens according to our ordinance, where you have to have, I forgot how many, 4,000 cars a day and X percentage over percentile, X percentile over the speeding limit, that will still be done through the speed board, or that will be contracted out?
The initial review would be done by us. It is a partnership because we have to review crash history. So Mr. Norsini, Amy can't get that. So one of these officers would be assigned. We would bring all that information together. If it was going to be a long time or a possible redesign of a particular street, then we would send the petition through. Steve would approve it. It would come here for evaluation. You would know what the cost is for the particular, intersection design. And then if it was a major intersection design, then it would be recommended that it be forwarded to Amy Kaminsky. So we would always have hands-on part of it, but once it became a certain level, it would be transferred off so that these guys could handle those daily duties, which we reviewed.
Right, and the initial data collection still is the responsibility.
Yes, it would be the Highway Patrol Unit teamed up with Steve Norsini and his group.
So when it came to the Board of Commissioners for, do we want to authorize more study from our, or treatment by our consultant, we would have that data in hand at that point, right?
Yes,
Okay.
the preliminary data, and one of us, or if it was an engineering issue, Steve could clearly lay out why this would be more of, I don't want to use the word quick fix, but a simple process, and it needed more investigation and design.
Well, I mean, having, reviewed this when we got it a few weeks ago, and really sort of having lived through it, we've done it this way on a couple projects that I was involved in. We had Amy look at and come up with some, a memo addressing some of the issues. I mean, I think it is more streamlined, it is more effective, and it also helps us sort of sift through the realistic projects before we spend a lot of time energy doing them as a board, as opposed to, one or two commissioners that come to the staff traffic meeting. So I'm very supportive, and thank you for suggesting these changes.
Could I ask, I'm going to read from your goal here, and I'm trying to figure out what problem we're solving here with this new procedure. It is the goal of Radnor Township to streamline and make efficient use of the Highway Patrol Unit involving traffic surveys and traffic engineering. This will enable officers to be more effectively utilized for street enforcement and patrol functions, thus directly benefiting the township and increasing safety. Are there conditions and situations now that are making you less efficient than you would be under this new program?
Commissioner, if I could just, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Commissioner, if I could just jump in. For every time one of these officers have to do a traffic study, it takes them away from those other duties that they're supposed to do as police officers. Basically, they're not traffic engineers. They never were. And to be honest with you, I don't think they should have ever got into this position where they did these types of studies and counts and measures and everything like that. They're supposed to be out there enforcing the traffic laws, doing accident reconstructions, and servicing the community. And when they have to do these traffic studies, it takes them away from those duties.
And just to add on to what the superintendent said, these are just a few of these where the staff traffic has done these, and we're doing them over and over and over again. And we just need to keep their time out into the road and not to where they're in the office just doing studies on top of each other, as we want to utilize their time out in the road doing police work instead of doing the type of engineering and looking at those studies that really the board should decide those and then ship those over to Amy or to engineering to let them do that work and them do their police work.
So a traffic count study on Bryn Mawr Avenue or Eagle Road to determine whether we need a new traffic signal or a stop sign?
Those counts in that, police are involved. It's the ones where if we get crosswalks or, speed humps or all these things where we have done all those, those should be done there where staff traffic, they've already done these. So really the decision is made. If this needs to be done again, the board should decide if we should spend the money to do this again. It's already been done. So deciding that should be something to go to engineering, because we're keeping too many officers in the building here. They should be out doing other items.
It's not to avoid doing something a second or third time. It's also to avoid spending money at that level without our board approving it for
Correct.
New projects.
The board should be doing that. That's correct.
Okay.
So, Bob, what do you need from the Board of Commissioners?
What we'd like to do is, if the board is okay with this, we would put this in policy format, get it to the board, you would approve the policy, and then this way, this is what the police department would work under, that this is a policy.
Well,
But the ordinance itself is not changing, the underlying ordinance?
No,
Okay.
this would just be a policy that staff traffic could work under, that this is the policy that they will
Well, I think it's
they'll
a sense
follow.
of the majority of the board that you should move forward. Any commissioner have any objections? All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, and keep up the good work. We appreciate
Great.
it.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Public Works and Engineering.
The only item I have tonight is Resolution 2015-29, which is a proposed license agreement for the property at the Ardrossan Farm that is now owned by the township, the Wheeler Tract. And what is going on here is that the Boy Scout Troop 284 has a affiliated organization called the Friends of Radnor Incorporated, which was set up to raise money for Troop 284. And the troop has occupied the portion of the Wheeler Tract for 60 years, I believe, and they use that for educational purposes for the Boy Scouts. There's a cabin there, and when the land was purchased by the township from the Ardrossan family, from the Scott Family Trust, then the Troop 284 needed a new landlord, and that's us. So, John Rice, you've drafted this, I believe, and as I understand it, This is a license, not a lease, which gives the landlord more rights to take the property back at its convenience. And if you could just outline maybe some of the basics here.
Okay, it is a license of essentially the cabin and a 1 acre area around the cabin. There's an exhibit attached to this, which was the original lot that the cabin, the schoolhouse, was placed on, and it's part of the deed that the township acquired in December. What's proposed here is for and this is something that there's been a fair amount of discussion on, as you know, last year in terms of a possible subdivision. This is not a subdivision. There is no agreement of sale for a subdivision with this board or with the township, but it is essentially a 6-month license which can be terminated subject to the termination provisions of the license. Permits the troop to continue to do what they've been doing, doesn't change any use. It's my understanding that the troop has been talking with the neighbors to address some of the issues with the neighbors. I think there's some members of the troop here tonight. There may be some members here tonight. Mr. Falcone who represents the troop, I thought maybe he would be here. I know he had another meeting tonight. Oh, okay. So there is counsel here. Okay. So that's what's in front of the board. It's a temporary use, can be terminated by the board if the board decides to move in another direction. Ultimately, I think the sense of the board last year was that there would be a subdivision of 2 acres, and then that would be conveyed. We carved that out of the land preservation of the property. So
You said 2 acres, not 1.
correct.
Well, this is 1, but if we go
Yeah,
to
if there's
purchase, it's going to be 2.
Yeah, if there's a sale and an acceptable agreement of sale and an acceptable subdivision plan, because there would have to be a subdivision plan process through the Planning Commission and back in front of this board. It was a 2 acre piece is what was settled on at that time, but we're not at that stage yet. What you have is just the license, 6 months with some termination provisions and a continuation of what the troops have been doing there for some 60 years.
Well, I see Eric Jansen is
Well-
here with his colleague. Is there anything you want to tell us about the
Well, why don't-
subdivision and what's going
Why
on?
don't you move the introduction of the ordinance? Resolution.
I will move the
approval of
introduction
resolution.
of approval of resolution number 2015-29, providing for a license between the township and the Friends of Radnor Incorporated.
Second.
All right.
And I have a quick question.
Sure.
So, John Rice, I would characterize this as we had some discussions and negotiations, and some parts got ahead of other parts, and this is a temporary measure intended to let those other plans catch up so that they can occur. Is that an
Correct.
adequate
Right.
characterization?
Any other commissioner comment? Can we just vote on the motion, or do you want to say something?
I'd like to hear, we have counsel, you wanted to make a presentation?
No. Other than to say, you can't speak for the audience, I'm sorry. You have to go to Mike if you're going to speak. Well, I won't say anything. Okay, thank you.
I would like to hear what you came to say. I'm sure Dave would say something if he was here.
Yeah, I could not say it any better. Mike Berg, Saul Ewing, representing the applicant, or the Friends of Radnor, Troop 284. It's a simple license agreement. It simply maintains the status quo. And, hopefully the commissioners will see fit to maintain the status quo so the process can work through the system over the next several months. And it's a great organization, and this is a good thing to do. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Why is it necessary to enter into this license agreement when we've never had it before? It's really not the status quo, is it? Because it's a new license agreement.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think the reason is the township would want to be in control of the situation and not have use of township property without a legal agreement. This gives access rights, termination rights, requires that the scouts comply with all township ordinances. So it's really probably mutually beneficial, but something absolutely the township would want to have.
We did not own the property before December when we
Understood.
made
Yeah.
settlement. So
you're-
we now
you
own the
become,
property, yes.
Become an owner.
Any
Understood.
other member of the public have a question?
Hi, Diane Edbrell, Spruce Tree Road. I don't have a question so much as a comment. I understand that there is a process underway by which this particular group, through a nonprofit or, some legal means, is raising funds to buy this property outright. And when that happens, of course, it's private property. But my only concern, and, don't get me wrong, I think that scouting is a very valuable activity. I myself was a Girl Scout many years ago. But, nonetheless, the umbrella organization that would be signing off on this license is the Boy Scouts of America, which is an organization which discriminates against homosexuals. And I just think that we ought to be mindful of that before we embark on an agreement whereby we give a license of public property, township property, to be used by an organization which I think really is in the wrong on this issue. And I would venture to guess many of you, if not all of you, share that view. So I just want to put it out there, take a step back maybe, think about it. It's different than a sale. You sell private property, it's private property. But giving the license of a public facility to an organization that discriminates, I think and when you weigh, the equities in this situation, by all means, I'm not vilifying the Boy Scouts of America, but I think that it creates the potential for thornier problems down the road. And if there's a way to avoid that, maybe that's the better course of action.
I'd like to invite up the representatives to address that issue, because it's a good issue, but it has been addressed.
Can we just make it clear, the licensee in this is the Friends of Radnor 284 Incorporated?
Which is what they're
So
going
it's
to
in
talk
fact
about.
not
So go ahead.
the other entity you stated.
And one of the reasons
Excuse
that
me, address the board, not the audience.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
One of the reasons that the Friends of...
Introduce yourself.
Give us your name.
Eric Jansen. One of the reasons that the Friends of Radnor 284 organization was formed was because of some of the policies. The Boy Scouts of America has changed their policies considerably in the last year, but our organization does not discriminate. And the township would not be entering into an agreement with the Boy Scouts of America.
Well, your organization, when you say your, you mean the Friends of...
Friends of Radnor 284.
Do you also mean Troop 284?
Do I mean...
when you say you
no,
don't...
they're two different entities.
Yeah.
The Friends of Radnor 284 would be, hopefully, purchasing the land.
Right.
And we'd be the controlling...
The Troop would be.
No, the Friends of. The Troop would be actually renting it from that organization. So the Boy Scouts of America does not have any say in this transaction.
And your policy on homosexual?
Is posted on the website, for284.org, and we do not discriminate in any way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, thank you. Any other public comment? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0. Personnel and Administration.
Thanks, Bill. At the last meeting, I requested that we have on the agenda an item to discuss the parameters of directing the township solicitor. There were a lot of questions about whether or not individual commissioners have the right to engage or direct the solicitor of the township to perform legal work without the full knowledge of the board or without the full vote of the board. So that is on the agenda. I'll make a few comments to this. I've been on the board for 7 years and 4 months, and my point of view on this is that the rules really shouldn't change. At no time did we ever have the power to direct the solicitor to perform legal activities on behalf of individual commissioners. So the history has always been for me, at least in the last 7 years and say 4 months, that if we wanted the solicitor to perform some legal activity, the board would direct the solicitor during a public meeting. And for me, it hasn't changed. That's the way I've been operating. I hope that's the way my fellow commissioners operate. Now, the other comment I want to say is that our solicitor is a township official, as defined in the charter. I treat our solicitor as a township official. And I also want to recognize that the solicitor has a limited amount of time and resources to act on agency business. So even though we have a retainer that says, in this case, Solicitor Rice will do everything we need him to do in a year, we know that he's human and he can't do everything we want to do. We have to pick and choose what we want him to do. The charter clearly prohibits any commissioner from directing township officials in private or in public without a public vote. And a commissioner may ask for information, forward constituent complaints and issues, but not direct any official in the township to perform duties. So if I get a complaint about a pothole, I don't call Steve Norsini and say, Steve, you need to fill that pothole. I say, Steve, a constituent has complained about a pothole at such and such address. Do what you need to do. I don't tell him to fill it. I just let him know that there's an issue. Same with Solicitor Rice. If I have, if there's a legal concern that I might have, I may forward that to Solicitor Rice, but I won't ask him to write me an ordinance or a resolution. And the last comment I want to say, it just makes sense that the commissioners should get a sense of the board of what legal direction we want to head in, whether that's a resolution, ordinance, or any type of official act of this board, before we ask the solicitor individually to do that. Because quite frankly, at the end of any evening, all 7 of us could email John and ask him to work on 7 new resolutions or 7 new ordinances. And John doesn't have the time to do 7 new ordinances, but it would make more sense to get a sense of the board. So I think my fellow commissioners will agree with some of these items. I just think it makes for cleaner government if we treat all township officials with the same set of rules. I'm not going to direct Steve Norsini. I'm not going to direct John Rice. It's not what I do. That's my comment.
All right, I'll echo mine. So they're probably very similar. I don't see really any request as forbidden. There's a request is distinct from placing an order. So I ask John for information all the time. An order would be forbidden regardless of its de minimis. So even something harmless, a resolution supporting Secretary's Day would be inappropriate in my opinion if we're telling him to do it. There's probably some gray, and sometimes people might ask for a sample ordinance from another municipality. That's a request I don't see that there's an issue there. The threshold for me is the policy tool. So information that we need to help us make policy decisions, to me, is appropriate. Creating the policy tool, so something like a resolution or an ordinance, to me, that would be inappropriate. And then mostly, probably more than any other reason, it would be, for me, it's the good government aspect that it is best for us if we move from general to particular, and before we have a resolution or an ordinance, that it is the sense of the board, not a sense of a single commissioner. My concern tends to be that anchor, that what comes on, what is printed in paper and comes out in the drafted, comes out with the packet, becomes the anchor, and that anchor should be created by some kind of process involving us. So those are my thoughts on the subject.
Well, I don't have too much to add to that. I think those were both well-stated positions. I agree with both of them. So ditto that.
John?
Hashtag ditto that. I think just to clarify, what Don means is, as an anchor, when a document is produced, that's the draft that you're working off of. In other words, that serves as the foundation for all subsequent action. And because of that, it's particularly important that we don't have one person on the board driving what will be the foundation for an action. And this came up as a result of the resolution that was spoken about earlier this meeting, which related to the conduct of meetings. Now, that particular resolution, we pointed out at the last meeting, was not the subject of a board commissioner meeting, nor the subject of deliberations by this board, and therefore was not properly authorized with respect to the solicitor actually preparing the document. So I'm just going to echo the sentiments of the three commissioners who spoke, and I don't think our rules need to be changed. Our rules are clear. One board member cannot direct the solicitor to perform legal services at his own behest and fiat. So we're just confirming what is already the rules for the Board of Commissioners.
Well, I don't disagree with much of what was said. I will get into the issue of the resolution from last meeting, Rich, since you raised it. I was the one that did contact the solicitor, and my discussion with him was to ask whether he had a resolution in his files, or if his law firm has such a resolution, that I could see and that I could circulate to other board members that would address the issue of extended comments during the public comment portion of our meetings, and could address the question of people repeating comments, making comments at the beginning of the public meetings, and then coming back during agenda items, repeating them or adding to them, and then coming at the end of the meeting to, again, make statements on the same subject. And it's not that I oppose the right under the First Amendment to make statements. It's that I think it's, in fairness to other people, for us to be able to accommodate all the people that want to make statements at our meetings. We cannot have endless oratory on subjects by members of the public. We have to limit it. And there's a neighboring township in Charlestown that limits comments to 3 minutes. I'm sure if we did a survey, we would find that there are other townships that have 3-minute rules, 5-minute rules. We have a 5-minute soft rule here in Radnor, and I think it serves us well. But to characterize the things that I did, the thing that I did was directing John Rice to draft an ordinance is wrong. It was a discussion on what he had and what his law firm had, and he did give me something which I circulated to all the other commissioners. I sent it to Commissioner Booker, and 2 days later, I think it ended up in the hands of our learned member of the Fourth Estate. And from there, it was commented on extensively in the public. So, but again, it's not an issue of free speech. It's an issue of reasonable limitations on repetitive comments and extensive comments by members of the public or developers or anybody else that has business before this board.
John?
Yeah, can I just address, I think there's a sort of fundamental, and I wasn't here, you had a special meeting on a Tuesday. I happened to be at a municipal meeting in beautiful Pocono Township that night, arguing about a sewer construction project. But what happened with these rules, and I never considered that I was being directed to do anything. And Commissioner Fisher, if all 7 of you emailed me tomorrow and said, do this, do that, I would not do it. And I've been asked to do things, anything that involves official action, spending township money, drafting ordinances, I bring back to this board if I get a single or two commissioner requests. So, but with this particular instance, what actually happened was, and all of you have talked about having rules for public comment for various reasons. This discussion has been going on for as long as I've been the township solicitor. Your township manager has raised it in the past. So this particular time, Commissioner Higgins, I think, either called me and sent me an email and asked me whether I was aware of rules that other townships have. Now, we represent 15 to 20 municipalities in 5 counties. In this county, in Montgomery County, in Bucks County, in Monroe County, in Northampton County, and in Lehigh County. And I have several partners that do the same thing that I do. So I sent an email to my partners and some of the associates. Does anybody have any published rules and regulations of other municipalities? And I got 3 or 4 samples back, which I sent on to Commissioner Higgins. One which was in a Word document that was for a second-class township. I think it talked about supervisors. So there's no directing me to do anything. This is something that I get all the time from this board. And because of our background and our experience, there's not much that comes in front of this board that either myself or one of my partners or someone has dealt with. So I'm a source of information, and this was essentially not just, I think, one set of rules, but I had multiple sets of rules from different municipalities in different counties, and they're all different. It's a policy decision whether you want to go forward with it. It was something that Commissioner Higgins asked for in terms of information. It's permissible under the Sunshine Act. And so there was no directing, there was no drafting. It was not a new assignment that I sat down and put pen to paper. It was something that I just accumulated and sent on to Commissioner Higgins. And I've done it for, I think, probably all of you in some fashion, as long as you've been on the board. Questions come up. I'm your legal counsel. I think I can give you information at any time. I can give you samples of documents, ordinances, policies at any time. But formal legal opinions, preparation of special ordinances, or, you know, that comes after this board directs me to do that as a whole. So that's what happened.
Okay.
Sorry about the misunderstanding.
Thank you.
I wasn't here.
Yeah, but John, with all due respect, this resolution is clearly in the format for the township. It calls out the township. It's somebody put 2015-30, set this up with Bill Spengler signing off and said blank 2015. Even if it's a tenth, even if it's 1/10 that you're going to bill, if it's just 6 minutes, nobody can direct you to spend 6 minutes. It's just before you do this, that needed to come before the board, and I just disagree that this is just an email forwarded. It wasn't. There was some modicum of work, which to ask you to do that, I believe, would be improper.
So Commissioner Higgins is an attorney. I think he probably knows how to modify resolutions, and if the board doesn't want me to respond to requests for information, that would be a very unusual policy to put into place. I think that would be, and you've all asked me for information.
Right. So who did draft this, though? Was this drafted by someone here on on our board?
No, it was a policy that someone in my office gave me from a second-class township. I think the initial draft called out a board of supervisors, and I'm not sure which township it was, but it was another municipality in another county, and it was a board of supervisors, and that's what was passed on. It's a sample of a policy that's been in place in another municipality.
So you did not adopt it to Radnor?
No.
So I still just think that I mean, sending a sample of something else or a Word document of something else for us to audit or edit is fine. But to me, any editing that would be done by your office should have clear direction from the board. Even
Hasn't
taking,
happened yet.
but somehow this got into form. Somebody put this into a form that it could have been passed tonight. And if that was done by if it was done by your office, in my opinion, it should have had 4 votes behind it. Which is perfect. This is the scenario that might have happened. A draft from Pocono Township might have been sent to somebody, and somebody here edited it, and it came up as a draft, and came up in this form. But to me, if when it gets to this form, and it comes to our packet, it's become the anchor, as Rich identified. And to me, it should have 4 votes behind it before it can be the anchor. It can get to.
Don't we have lots of resolutions and ordinances in the course of a year that are submitted to us for action?
Well, you're right, we do, and that's, yes, we have.
We didn't
yes.
authorize Bob or anybody
Yes.
else to put those together.
Right. So
they just put them together.
Yes, and another would be an example of that would be the land developments, where they come as resolutions or ordinances, and on day 1 there is that anchor. On the first day of that. So that's a consideration that has to be addressed. What's different here is that this is not routine business. This is a new policy, and we have a new policy that showed up as an anchor. And in my opinion, it's appropriate for us to take these documents and to edit them, and it's appropriate for us to exchange Word documents. But once it comes into the packet, it has to come, and it's a new policy. It has to be part of a commitment from at least 4 commissioners to make it that
By way
that
of
anchor.
rebuttal.
I thought any one commissioner could put anything on the agenda.
There's some,
By way of rebuttal, who on this board authorized the drafting by Mr. Rice of the license for Friends of Troop 284?
Yeah, that's fair. Now,
Nobody.
we had several discussions, though, about the license. We had that at multiple meetings.
Well, we've had discussions about a policy on
Okay.
public comment,
I
too.
see it as a different threshold, though. I see it as this is a new policy initiative, and it might be a good policy initiative. And I can see supporting elements of it. But, and to me, it's appropriate for, if this scenario happened, if a commissioner contacted the solicitor and said, I'm interested in exploring this idea as a new initiative, send me a draft from a municipality that it works, and then that solicitor edited it and shared it with or that commissioner edited it, shared it with other commissioners, got input, that to me is appropriate. But before it comes as the anchor for a new policy, I think it has to go through a process. I was not expecting this to be on the agenda today. That this was a surprise to me when I saw it.
So you're saying that if I didn't like the license that John drafted for Friends of Troop 284, I could not ask him to give me an alternative draft?
Yes.
I would have to come back to this board
Yes,
at
that's
the
right.
meeting in March and ask for that permission.
Yes, that's right.
That's
No,
ridiculous.
at this
That's going to
meeting-
tie all the hands of every commissioner on this board. We can't get anything done if we have to come back repeatedly or once, twice, to get permission from the other commissioners to do anything.
Well, I don't know that that's permission to do it.
Don, can I make a
Yes.
comment? Because I think you guys are going to argue over this. The distinction here is that the administration routinely will develop legislation for us to consider as a board. And we've become accustomed to that, and that's perfectly normal. That's how government works, okay? This is different. This is a policy that not only controls the public, but it controls our actions in a public meeting. Now, if administration had this draft and brought it to us for consideration, for discussion, we would discuss it in a public meeting, we would give direction back to staff, and they would make the changes as necessary. But I think I have to agree, Jim, I know no one, I want to make it clear, I don't think anyone's done anything egregiously wrong here. But I think what worries me about this process is that John Rice could give me a copy of an ordinance from another town, and I'll say, oh, I'm going to wordsmith that, take care of that. I give it back and somehow makes it into our packet. And it's got the wrong town names, it's got the wrong citations, it's got all these things wrong because John Rice didn't have to go over it and do it. So I just want to make sure that from a good document standpoint, that either administration is driving the language that we see, that we consider, and John Rice has taken that language and made sure, he's gone through it and made sure that it is in fact accurate and correct for our consideration. But nothing else, that's it. There's only one path of a document. It has to go through John.
I still don't see how you can
But it has to go through.
force this board to act collegially on every issue that a commissioner wants. For example, Tammy Cohen's packet tonight. No commissioner here authorized any of those resolutions to be drafted.
I made it clear
They
that
were done.
Jim, administration routinely generates resolutions and ordinances for us to consider. But this one did not originate from administration. This one originated, I assume,
But
from
John,
you.
how about if you had an ordinance? You had an ordinance, you developed it yourself, and you said you wanted it on the agenda. Under our rules, we have to put it on the agenda.
We have to put it on the agenda, but I think the
Yeah.
proper form is to bring it onto the agenda for discussion purposes only, not adoption.
Exactly.
think
The
the difference
difference here is that all of that can happen. You can get the draft from John. It can be for Schuylkill County or whatever it is. Bring it to the board, discuss it in public, get 4 votes, and direct a resolution to be provided to the board. It's that simple.
But then we have, it's simple then, all we have to do is, it has to be on the agenda for discussion.
I think that's
it. Okay,
and
fine.
especially something like this that's very contentious.
Okay.
We certainly don't want to put a resolution that can be adopted in one vote. There's no introduction. That makes the public very concerned. So I don't want to make more out of it. But the point is, we're going to address it.
Okay, fine. Next, we have Park and Recreation.
I think it's prudent to allow public comment. It's not my decision.
Well, no, there's no comment on this. This is just.
Hold on.
there's no-
Point of order. We do this all the time. We sometimes we have to have consistency. Obviously, there's people here that want to talk about this. We can't.
We have public participation later where they can discuss.
Don, can we back up a second? Do we have consensus to the board that the rules that I stated are the rules? That
sure.
no
Yes. I
think we
individual
do.
commissioner
I think
shall
it's
direct
always been the
staff.
rule.
I think we do.
Right?
always
And
been the
they're not my rules. It's the charter. It's the
Yes.
supreme rule of our land
right.
here.
And, as someone who has to approve the agenda, any commissioner puts an item on there, they want it on there, it can be for discussion only. I got it. Okay.
All right. Now, I believe that you should allow public comment on this. I think it would be a mistake to not do it.
I would agree with that. So if that's a motion, I second it.
But I don't know that we need a motion. Let's see what he says.
All right, fine.
Hi, Diane Edbrill again, still on Spruce Tree Road. Initially, I wasn't going to talk about this topic, but over the course of the whole meeting, there were a lot of things that really made me think, and I really feel compelled to say a number of things right now. And the first thing that I want to say is that I'm really pleased that, sort of as an initial step in this process, that you heard the concern of the people in the community and pulled it off as an agenda item. I get that there are any number of people on the board at any point in time who feel personally attacked, who feel like their hands are tied from doing what they were elected to do, what they ran hard to win the job to do, to make Radnor Township, an increasingly fabulous place to live, which it is. And I get the frustration that happens when people feel like there are roadblocks and impediments to you in doing that. But what really, sort of struck me tonight, it was in particular during Tammy's presentation, and it was the slide that she showed about public participation in the Parks and Rec activity that really was, it just got me to thinking, and I don't know if that slide could come up again, but it was powerful. You know, it showed sort of there was this sort of flat period leading up to 2010. And, you know, then from that point on, this very, very significant rise in community participation in the Parks and Rec events. And I think, you know, that is a tremendous credit to Tammy. And I think that that is a tremendous credit to Bob Zinkowski, who hired Tammy and has, you know, supported her in the work she does in her as department head in Parks and Rec. And I thought to myself, and then that sort of message was actually reinforced during the Deer presentation, and there's sort of the same time frame that happens, that things really started happening in 2010. And, you know, I look at, like, financially sort of where we've come over the last 5 years since then, and, you know, I sort of think we're really, really lucky that Bill White is here in Radnor and not, like, raking in, you know, the super big bucks in the private sector instead, and I'm very grateful, and, you know, I hope we have you for a long time. And I thought to myself, you know, not to take away one iota of credit of the individuals who sit here and who work very hard every day in this building, but it occurred to me, what was the opportunity that created, or what was the event that created the opportunity for us, for all of us here in Radnor Township, to benefit from their skill and commitment and hard work? And I just want to remind everyone up here, over there, at home, that it was the tireless efforts of a couple of people to insist that government be done properly in Radnor Township. It was somebody banging her head against the wall day after day, month after month, year after year, until enough people sat up and said, you know what? It should be done the right way, and it must be done the right way. And I know that a lot of the decisions and a lot of the frustrations and a lot of, you know, the sort of the acrimony that we've been all dealing with over the last few months, it's hard. I can imagine if I were you guys, if I were there instead of Mr. Booker, I would probably be feeling the same way. It's hard not to feel attacked, but I just want to remind all of you that it's not about you, and it's not about them. It's about Radnor Township, and it's about what the people in this community demand and expect and deserve. And so each time your hackles are raised because you think somebody is pointing out something that you has done wrong, some failing of yours, it's not because of you. It's because there's a right way, there's a right thing, there's an ideal out there that we should all embrace. And I hope that each one of you, when you hear something that, you know, one's initial response is to get defensive. We're all human. I do the same thing. We're criticized, we get defensive. But you know what? Sometimes we have to take a step back and say, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this point is legitimate, and maybe there's a better way to respond. I'm not naming names, I'm not pointing fingers. It's just been occurring to me that we really need to find a different way to understand what's happening here. And if you look at how far Radnor Township has come in the last 5 years, because a couple of people were willing to bang their heads against the power structure, the entrenched power structure that was making decisions that hurt the community. Maybe not decisions that they knew were bad or that were maliciously motivated, but nonetheless they were decisions they were making that hurt our community. And I just want to remind everyone about that as we move forward, because the only thing anyone who steps into this room wants is for Radnor Township to be everything it can be. Thank you very much.
Dan Sherry, Wayne. Lost, at least I didn't hear it, in the discussion tonight was the actual plain language of Radnor's charter alluded to by Mr. Fisher as well as Mr. Booker. Section 2.09H of Radnor's charter sets forth in relevant part an express prohibition on commissioners from individually directing officials and employees. Administrative policy. It is the intent of this charter that the board act as a body in relation to all township matters. All. All. No commissioner acting individually shall seek, I emphasize that word seek, publicly or privately to direct the acts of township officials and employees. An incredibly low standard. Not just don't direct, don't even seek to direct. Now, Commissioner Higgins and Mr. Rice, who appears to have walked out of the room, presented statements tonight that made it sound like this was just informational, that Jim Higgins just asked John Rice for some proposed ordinances, just informational. Well, in addition to having that proposed redlined resolution circulated throughout the township, and I've seen it, I've also seen the cover email that was authored by Jim Higgins. Here's what it says. No, strike that. Let's first hear what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, Dear Commissioner so-and-so, I reached out to John Rice and asked him for some sample ordinances, some draft resolutions. I enclosed them for your review. No, here's what it says, and I think you all know this. I have worked with John Rice to come up with rules for use at our meetings in order to speed them up and make sure proper decorum is observed. That is a direct quote from Jim Higgins. I have worked with John Rice to come up with rules. And yet he comes here tonight and states, oh, it's just informational. Now, that's just Jim Higgins' cover email, which clearly shows that the particular portion of the charter that I just read was breached. Now, when you look at the red-line version of that Microsoft document itself, it is notable that in the upper left-hand corner, the name J. Rice appears. This is obviously evidence that Solicitor Rice did, and was sought to be directed to, and in fact did, work on this document. Moreover, there's a red line comment. It's J13 on the proposed resolution, and it's an inquiry posed to a John, which I think we can all assume is John Rice, which states as follows. John, do you want to incorporate Robert's Rules of Order at this point? Again, I'll read that. John, do you want to incorporate Robert's Rules of Order at that point? At this point, we enacted the rules, and they are in Administration Legislation, Chapter 5, Article 2, Sections 5 through 6. So I will take strong issue in statements tonight that it was merely informational back and forth between Jim Higgins and John Rice. There are tangible documents to the contrary. I must respectfully also have to agree with Commissioner Booker. I get very nervous when this board starts getting a sense of the board on types of things that are already plain language of the charter. The only time we should really be getting a sense of the board as to what we should do is if the charter is ambiguous or at least arguable. But of course, pursuant to Commissioner Fisher's remarks tonight, it's always been this way. It's always been his understanding that this is the way it works. Yes, the employees of the township can, of their own volition, come to you with things they have drafted and work they have done. But that is a one-way street insofar as it's behind closed doors. You want to direct the employees and the officials like John Rice to do something, you bring it up in a public meeting, and you get the 4 votes. And at that point, the public is made aware. They know that this board is considering putting forth certain rules as to how board meetings will be conducted, a complete change from decades of policy.
Right.
Then they know. They come in and they will speak.
Thank you very much. Your 5 minutes
They will come
has
in
come.
and speak,
Mr.
and they
Sherry,
will give
wrap it
you
up, please.
alternative ideas. Instead, what happened here, it is quite clear, is that Jim Higgins, without authorization from this board, without even an executive session, which of course would be a Sunshine Act violation, directed John Rice, a township official, to draft a resolution. I am happy you pulled that back tonight. I think you all know that that was poison in terms of its creation, not to mention its substance. But please, do not fall into the trap of thinking that the charter is somehow ambiguous. It is not. And incidentally, this was no mere official that Jim Higgins sought to direct. That's the township solicitor who oversaw the Charter Review Committee. He, more than anybody else, should know that that's a violation of the charter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road in Rosemont, and I'm speaking tonight as the president of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township. We have prepared a statement on the resolution 2015-30, establishing rules and regulations for the conduct of public meetings pursuant to the Sunshine Act prior to knowing it was removed from the agenda. However, based on the discussion, I would like to add our comments at this time. At the local, state, and national level, we advocate for good government nurtured through civic participation. In Radnor Township, our league will take action and support positions on openness of governmental proceedings. We expect high standards of professionalism and individual accountability in all functions of the township, including personnel practices, as stated in the Radnor Home Rule Charter. This position, which I just stated, was based on study and consensus of league members long before my time with this organization. However, it appears, as George Bernard Shaw so aptly said, we learn from history that we learn nothing from history. Let this not be the case. First, the Sunshine Law and the Right to Know laws are not efforts to thwart the business of local government, but rather are instruments of mass instruction. They are part of the legal system that should be upheld and strengthened by those who practice law, rather than diminished and diluted by those whose intent is not in the best interest of the public. This month, a bipartisan-sponsored bill was introduced in Harrisburg to strengthen the right to know law and increase transparency. It may be a surprise to some that a longtime Delaware County elected official, often seen as the most powerful man in Harrisburg, Dominic Pileggi, is its primary sponsor. Perhaps he has learned the wisdom of experience. Second, policy statements and the language of our Home Rule Charter are not knee-jerk reactions. They are the results of months and often years of give and take, editing, rewriting, and public comment. The League supports and participates in their periodic review and revision. Our members, known for their ability to act on consensus, are proud to be involved in this often painstaking process. To see a resolution on public comment at the end of this evening agendas altered a long-standing practice and was of deep concern to the League. Finally, one only needs to look at recent headlines and perhaps ratings of cable coverings of meetings to find the roots of such a resolution. As commissioners, you have been and continue to be challenged by decisions that have significant, lasting implications on the nature of Radnor. Too often, issues have been decided on a ward-by-ward or partisan basis, rather than as one with a township-wide or precedent-setting impact. The growing audience at your meetings is not an effort to impose mob rule, but rather a reflection of the passion and serious concerns of your constituents. The League applauds such participation and encourages civility of discourse. The proposed resolution, made in the stated interest of time, order, and reasonableness in conducting business, curtails the process of public participation that is so fundamental to democracy. In today's technological world, elected officials should be welcoming openness and the transmission of government proceedings, not trying to place barriers to those wishing to record public meetings. Further, attempts to reduce redundancy fly in the face of thousands of years of evidence that supports the importance of repetition and learning, in spite of how inconvenient or at times annoying it can be. In addition, the unprecedented latitude for the president to rule public comments out of order promotes an atmosphere where the message, as well as the messenger, can be stifled. Efforts to diminish one person or one group serves to diminish all of us. In conclusion, the League commends you for removing the resolution on public comment from this evening's agenda. Thank you for your ongoing consideration.
Thank you.
Christina Peroni. I would just like to thank the League for writing that very thoughtful analysis of what happened. So I also want to thank Mr. Booker, Mr. Curley, Ms. Schaefer, and Mr. Fisher for conclusively and clearly saying they want to follow the charter and that they're not going to direct staff. I never got the impression from Mr. Higgins nor Mr. Spingler that they were completely on board with this concept, which was a disappointment. Mr. Rice wrote a memo when he was being asked about something else he did, which was allowing executive session in a time when it didn't seem very appropriate, nor did it follow the charter. But in this memo that he wrote himself, dated 12/30/14, he writes, Section 2.09G of the Charter states, no formal action shall be taken by the board except at a regular meeting or special meeting with the opportunity provided for comments and questions by the public prior to a vote. So I believe Mr. Rice, by accepting this...
Sorry, could you direct your questions to the board? Don't look over there, please. Thank you. You're talking to the board.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Rice, by accepting the request by Mr. Higgins, knew he was violating the charter, and if he didn't, he should have known. It is only supposed to happen, as you all know, as a group decision. So Mr. Rice violated the charter. Why doesn't Mr. Rice know better? And what is the consequence to Mr. Rice? Mr. Higgins should have understood the charter just as well. He's an attorney. It's explicitly clear that only the board as a whole can direct someone. So I would go back to, why do we have a solicitor who doesn't know the charter and didn't come back to Mr. Higgins? Mr. Higgins should have known not to do it, and Mr. Rice should have said, oh, I'm not going to do this. So it would be nice to hear something affirmatively by Mr. Rice stating that he will not do this again. It would really be nice, and it would be a little encouraging to hear that he will not take direction unless 4 people vote. I would really love to hear that from you, Mr. Rice, that you plan to follow the charter.
David Wood. I would just like to say that I'm disappointed in the difference I heard between board comment and public comment. It seems like there was a completely different story until the public got up and spoke, and I heard something that I'm far more disturbed by than what I heard from the commissioner discussion. And I hope that after public comment, you'll clear that up, because I almost can't believe it.
Good evening, Phil R. from Rosemont, Pennsylvania, and I don't think I need 5 minutes to say what we're going to say here. But I do want to mention that I'm here tonight because in reading the agenda, I thought that this was going to be a motion that you were going to pass tonight. So to John's point about what was that looking like, to me and perhaps to others, it appeared that this was a legitimate motion that you were considering right out of the box and could have easily passed tonight. I'm glad that you didn't. Thank you for tabling it. But this is worthy of serious discussion. So since I thought that and I wrote some notes, I'm going to ask you to listen to it for a couple of minutes. Thank you. This is an issue of chilling public participation, or can be. And it's important to note that it's not in response to the public's complaint of the procedures here in this meeting. Now, there's great points have been made so far. I'm going to add a couple of different ones. First of all, you can try to legislate civility at meetings, but first and foremost, you must model it, and you must reinforce it. And then we all need to respect it. Civility and a courteous tone. I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question to consider. Has it been so long that you've sat on this side of the dais, that you've forgotten the importance, the vitality, and the contribution that public participation provides in our township. You know, of all governments, local entities have the biggest impact on people's lives. As long as they don't make personal attacks, they ought to be able to take as long as they want to talk about an issue at township meetings. It seems to be our treasured right here in Radnor that we've enjoyed for many years. Now, we get it. For some reason, more than any time in the last 8 years that I've been attending meetings, where there seems to be a need to restore civility at meetings. But while this procedure might generally be allowed by law, and I've looked at the law about this regard, and you are within it, it's speaking to the minimum of procedures. So is Radnor striving to do the minimum? You know, this is the wrong direction, and we need to be reaching for excellence. That is, in finding ways to encourage public participation, not limiting it. You know, the township, as you all know, we've heard tonight from Tammy and others, that the township reaps big benefits from citizens' participation in the form of comment, volunteer boards, and committees. We're blessed with many talented and generous people who volunteer time and expertise to the township. What happens when you start limiting comment? Careful, it's a slippery slope. One technical point, as a point on the ordinance, as it was drafted, and I assume that you're not going to go forward with it at this point, at least it's written, but it does talk about how you have agendas and supporting documents prepared on the website by Friday. I'll call to your attention the fact that in the Charter of the Radnor Township Code, Section 209, Section F, about meeting notices and agenda, it says the president of the board shall cause an agenda to be prepared for each regular meeting, including such items proposed by individual commissioners, and shall cause copy of the agenda and supporting documentation or reports to be prominently posted on Township's website, as well as to be made available to the public at the Township building at least 5 days prior to the day of the meeting. Now, this is not a technical or small point. This is substantive, because to do less than that denies an opportunity for public preparation for any comment, stifles public comment and the quality of discussion. So I hope that takes into consideration that you follow the charter. Lastly, this ordinance, as it was presently worded, is not in the interests of or worthy of Radnor citizenry. Governmental regulations are best with the least levels of intrusion. And we should not be in a hurry to freeze out a few. And we've heard how sometimes a few can actually have a great benefit to the township. Because not only that, but because it will also have the effect of chilling the many. And how many people want to come up here and speak and not because we have a lot of extra rules and regulations. So I think we can do better. Please take time to find a better alternative, a less intrusive one, and keep Radnor's meetings and Radnor Township the best they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Parks and Recreation. Finance and Audit. Community Development. Library.
We had a meeting last Thursday. We have at that meeting the introduction of our new executive director, Annie Lapel, and also announced there will be a party for and a going away dinner for our retiring executive director, Kathy. In addition, we spent a lot of time talking about the new construction. There is a grant it's been talked about several times. There is a grant that the library has received, and there'll be matching funds from the township, and they will be raising money. So it could be up to a $4 million project for the expansion of the library, and we have seen some of the alternatives in prior meetings. So we talked a lot about that. And in addition, we also mentioned the March 7th fundraiser for Radnor Canine Corp., and that was a also a project for the library to get some folks out. So that was our meeting.
Public health?
John Nagel is the liaison, but he is ill tonight, so I would like to, on his behalf, announce the 2015 Health and Safety Fair that will be held at this building, brought to you by the Radnor Township Workplace Safety Committee. It is on Wednesday, March 18th. It's here in this lobby, and I believe this room as well, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and it's open to all residents, employees, and has free admissions. There are door prizes, free refreshments, and you can learn about workplace safety. And health and safety. I think there are many organizations from the community that come and set up tables on, present their goods and wares and policies on health and safety. So please join the township on March 18th, and you're sure to have a good time.
Thank you. Old business?
I just have a quick one. I just want to announce that since going paperless, I'm now carrying around about 2,000 pages of commissioner packets this year already. And I have immediate contact from constituents during votes. They're sending emails with their opinions and concerns. So I'm going to recommend that this board consider going paperless. It makes for a nicer home environment without papers all around the living room and dining room and all those things. And it also, I think, makes for better government, because I really do have a much quicker access to information than I did prior to going paperless. I also had the advantage of being able to look back at prior agendas, prior meeting packets during a meeting if I need to reference something that was said. I'm able to annotate everything that's going on during the meeting. I'm basically scribing on the electronic paper what I'm going to say, what I'm going to do, what is being said. So I'll strongly recommend that the township consider this as the next step in moving us forward from the old way. So just my comment. Thank you.
Do you have any Apple stock?
This is not an Apple device, but I won't tell you who made it, just so you can pick
All right.
your own.
Just disclosure, that's all.
New business?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just think we have to address the issue of what happened at the ethics board, and I think we need to address it tonight. And not, I don't know that we need to take action tonight, but we need to determine what that action is tonight, decide whether we're going to take action tonight or at another night. So facts as I see it, I see the comment as inappropriate. I see that as a fact, and I think it rose to a level that's unusual and requires action on our part, somebody's part. Somebody has to take action. John acknowledged that the comment was inappropriate, John Nagel. I wish John was here. I came tonight prepared with this, expecting John to be here. I think we have to go on. I think it has to be said anyway, even in John's absence. So he acknowledged it and he apologized. I recognize that there's a difference of opinion regarding whether the apology was appropriate, and also there's still not agreement on what was said. But he did apologize, and he did acknowledge that he did something wrong. So then the ethics board made a decision, but its determination was that it was not in the purview of the ethics board. So then the question for us is, well, whose purview is it? If it's not the ethics board, someone has to take action. It's that metaphor of the balloon with a hole in it that you're blowing up. If something goes in someplace, it has to come out another. So the rules that led the ethics board to make its decision aren't for us to decide tonight. As I think it's for us to decide, because they did not make a decision, we have to decide who will make that decision, who will take action on that. So now some opinions. I agree with the ethics board that we don't want them being the arbiter of civility, but if they're not going to do it, then I think that means that it's going to fall on our board to do it. I think it was reasonable for Mr. Sherry to view the comment as a threat. I think the subsequent investigation determined that it was more of an outburst, and it's my understanding that everybody is comfortable with that determination. But the reality is it was still inappropriate, and it was still threatening, regardless of whether, it doesn't matter who was right on what was said, it was still inappropriate, and it requires action regardless of what was said. And then I reviewed the tape several times. I could not tell whether it was shoot me or shoot you, but there's enough in the tape, in my opinion, that it's clearly inappropriate and it has to be addressed and not ignored. So there's an attribute of successful institutions called graduated sanctions. So what has to happen here is we have to apply the appropriate sanction. Not too much, not too little, the appropriate sanction. So some kind of scaled response. And then it leads us to, all right, well, what is the action that we would take? So Robert's Rules talks about minor infractions. A minor infraction, you simply ask for the behavior to stop, and that should be sufficient. Something that Robert's Rules calls a grave breach requires 1 is an apology, 2 is a withdrawal, which is not applicable, 3 is an exit, which is also not applicable, 4 is a censure, which is applicable, and 5 is a suspension, which is not applicable. So that leaves, in my opinion, that leaves 2, which is the apology and the censure. It also says that any member can require the vote to impose the penalty. John has made the apology. I recognize that there's a difference of opinion on whether that apology is adequate or inadequate. So that leaves then to censure, which is an expression of formal disapproval. And in my opinion, someone needs to make that expression of formal disapproval. If I were John, I would accept that. John has acknowledged that the behavior was inappropriate. He's committed to doing better. I believe him. I believe he is doing better. I believe his commitment. So in my opinion, it's in everyone's best interest for some kind of formal expression of disapproval to occur and for John to accept that. It could be something as simple as on the meeting on December 8th, Commissioner Nagel made inappropriate remarks to Dan Sherry. The BOC expresses its formal disapproval of those remarks and directs John Nagel to apologize. If this is done, if that action were taken, then in my opinion, the issue would be done. In my opinion, that satisfies the criteria of action. And then if somebody feels aggrieved by that action, they have recourse. But in my opinion, that action that I just defined would satisfy our responsibility to take action. I do want to push back a little bit against the claim that no action was taken, because there was some action taken. It might have been insufficient, but there was some action taken. The police were called, the police investigated. There was police follow-up, meaning we didn't just walk away from this room and hoped everything happened. We took it seriously. And then there was also a commitment on some to take action, and the ethics board was part of that action. Now, the ethics board did not take action, so then that changes the venue at which the action occurs. So in sum, I think we need, it's a sense, what's the mood of the board? I think we need some kind of action, some kind of scaled response that indicates that we recognize the comments were inappropriate, and I think that would satisfy our obligation. So at this point, I'd like to hear my fellow board members' thoughts on that, what I just identified.
All right. Obviously, I'm sure we've all given this a lot of thought because it's been a disturbing turn of events. I think, first of all, I want to acknowledge that I know many, many people have a very strong and passionate opinion about this. And about this incident and about how it has been handled. I have an opinion as well, and it may be different than your opinion, but that doesn't mean we can't be civil and respect each other's opinion. So I want to say that up front. I think that we can all agree, I think everyone on this board and Mr. Nagel himself can all agree that there was that he made a very inappropriate conduct, that he lost his cool, that it was inexcusable, and that he exercised really terrible judgment that night. That is something we all agree on. I think what our opinions differ on is the sanction for that and what is appropriate as a sanction. And in my opinion, I mean, we just heard a very beautiful and eloquent presentation by Diane, which I agree. You know something? These are humans, underpaid humans up here, and we're going to make mistakes. And owning that mistake, recognizing that mistake, apologizing for that mistake, that is a big part of addressing mistakes and moving forward. In my opinion, Commissioner Nagel owned his mistake. He apologized in private, he apologized in public, he admitted that he has done wrong, and in my opinion, I believe it's sincere. And especially in context of his decades of public service in this township, I believe it's sincere. I understand that some people don't think that that's enough. I think that Commissioner Curley's approach is interesting, but I also think it's very telling that at the end of that process of us all making a motion to censure with a direction to apologize, that's the end of that. That's the goal. Well, we've already gotten an apology. Now, I recognize it's never going to be good enough for some people, but in my opinion, I accept his apology. And I accept that he really is contrite and wishes that that did not happen, and he had not said that. I have to say, if we had not received an apology, and I did not feel that Commissioner Nagel understood sort of the magnitude of the mistake he made, I think a censure would be completely appropriate. And I would make the motion for that, because I do think the most important thing here is that we, and especially Commissioner Nagel, recognizes the magnitude of the mistake. But it was a mistake. It was a really terrible loss of temper, and I don't see it rising. It was, as Commissioner Curley, I mean, it was a grave breach, and I think we can all agree to that. But in my opinion, I feel like a public and private apology, which has already been issued to the papers, in a public meeting, and through email, is acceptable to me. Now, having said that, if somebody makes a motion along the lines of what Mr. Curley put forward, I don't see, to me, that's kind of neither here nor there. Fine, we can do that. But we've already gotten the apology, which is the end game of that action. So it seems sort of, silly. That's all I'd like to say right now.
All right. Mr. President, I'd like to move for a recess.
For what purpose?
I'd like to come back to this issue. I'd like to have a recess and come back to this issue after the recess.
To discuss it privately?
Yes.
John?
It's not a topic that's really covered under the Sunshine Act. To discuss whether or not to.
I'd like to discuss it with one or two commissioners, or what we should do.
That's fine, as long as.
I think if he wants to do that,
Yeah.
that's his decision.
Yeah.
That's appropriate, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I would recommend, I don't want to recess this discussion. Jim, if you'd like to go offline, because of the Sunshine Act, you have a right to go individually with.
We can recess for any purpose that's not illegal.
I'm not arguing that.
And what we do in those recesses is our own business, and that's what I'd like to do.
I'm
We'll take
not
a 5-minute
convinced.
break.
I'm not convinced that that's the case. Wait, no.
We didn't vote on
Point of
recess.
order.
Point of order. We didn't vote on
We did
recess.
not. That's not been a motion, and it has not been seconded, and it has not been approved.
Motion to recess.
Now, no, well, I don't want to do a recess. I think that there's no need for a recess, and I'm not sure that it is an appropriate executive session issue. I can't see why it would be.
It's not executive session.
I'm not
Okay,
going
all
into
right.
executive session. All right, I'm moving.
We don't need an executive session. It's already 9:55. Let's.
I said I'm not requesting one. I'm requesting a recess. That's my motion. If anybody wants to second it, they can
Second.
second.
All those in favor of recess, say aye.
Aye.
It fails. Okay.
Wait,
It
it
failed,
failed.
though.
It failed.
Failed,
Go
it failed.
Okay,
How many votes?
I'd like to, no, it didn't get any votes.
Did anybody vote for it?
No.
No, I second, no votes, yeah.
Okay. So I'll try to keep my comments to 5 minutes. A lot of people in this room don't know how I ended up here. But 8 years ago, there was a student in the high school that was accused of writing terroristic threats on a bathroom wall. And I came to find out that this student never had any disciplinary issues, never had any misconduct issues, but he ended up spending 16 days in Delaware County Prison until I bailed him out. And then I hired him counsel, and not only did he graduate from high school, but he had his record expunged. The point was, he made a mistake. He wrote something on a wall that was construed as a threat, and he paid dearly for it. We have a case here where an elected official said something that on any standard is offensive and could be construed as a threat. So I find it impossible not to act on this and recommend censure. I expected the Ethics Committee to do this and come back to us with a recommendation. I didn't expect them to come back without any action. So I'll recommend, and I fully recognize that John Nagel has apologized, and he probably feels remorse for saying what he said. He may have lost his temper. There are a lot of reasons why people do things. But the point is, we have to be held to the high standard. We set the tone for the rest of us. So everyone else in the room follows us. So how are we going to set rules about what is offensive speech if we're the ones doing all the offending? So I'd like to just say that while I respect John Nagel as a commissioner, I do not respect what I heard him say that night. And we can argue all night about what he said, but I know what I heard was unprofessional language. So I'll recommend that we vote to censure tonight.
Can I make a motion then? And
Yes, go ahead, make a motion. And we'll
Okay,
just get it over with, and John will
Yes.
have to.
And I'm predicating this with, we come from all different cultures, and I come from one that believes in redemption. So I'm believing I believe in John Nagel and his ability to, this isn't the end of the world for John Nagel, but this is necessary. So I motion that the BOC express its formal disapproval of John Nagel's comments at the December 8, 2014 meeting, and that he direct an apology to Dan Sherry for the comments.
Second?
Well, move to amend. I think the motion needs to have that the board censure and, so what was your motion there? You have to have the word censure.
The
in there.
definition of censure is, at least when I looked it up, it was an expression of formal disapproval. So
I would add that the board censure Radnor 5th Ward Commissioner John Nagel for his conduct December 8th, and his conduct was beneath the, open quote, highest standards of morality, close quote, standards, and, open quote, above reproach standards set forth in Section 39-2 of the Code of Radnor. So I would like to incorporate that. And the issue is, an apology is fine, and an apology to Mr. Sherry is appropriate. And while there was an apology, I think that the apology left something to be desired in that it wasn't specific. But to the extent that it wasn't, the issue is more important is, to me, is of reimbursement of fees for defense. And I would also like to have that not be a township expense.
Would you read again what you've?
okay, so let me make one editorial change to it that will just. Okay, so I motion that the BOC express its formal disapproval of John Nagel's comments to Dan Sherry at the December 8, 2014 meeting, Board of Commissioners meeting, and that the board directs John Nagel to apologize to Dan Sherry for his comments.
Second.
And,
There's a motion for an amendment.
yeah,
All
so,
right. Well, there's not a second to that amendment,
I-
so.
yeah.
All right.
I mean, I would like to hear John
Is there
Fisher's.
a second to,
One of
Rich
the
Booker's?
things that, all right, so, I don't know, do you want, am I speaking out of turn? Does anyone want?
The only language I would change is, I would just preface it by saying, in censure of Commissioner John Nagel, the board recognizes, yeah, and all the language you have, or just preface it with in censure.
An expression of formal disapproval is a censure.
I know,
So-
but we-
So, it's in my,
Just asking to call it out for what it is, that's all.
You've got to use the term in there.
In censure of Commissioner John Nagel.
Well, I want to,
I mean, make the motion and see if you have a
I
second.
can tell you that one of the things is that this motion, my sense is going to pass 6-0. And I think that's going to be a statement that it is an appropriate statement. And if we're going to quarrel over a word here, a word there, I think it might not pass at 3-3. So part of this decision is which way do we want to go?
yeah, it has to be unanimous. We can't have 5-1 or 4-3. We have to have this unanimous. I have to admit that I have completely changed my view of this as a result of the comments from the populace. I count John as a great friend. I've known him for 30 years when I served on this board. For 8 years in the 70s and 80s, or no, 80s and 90s. John was on the Parks and Recreation Board. We did work together. What he did was absolutely unacceptable and intolerable. I wanted to have a recess so I could tell the other board members individually that I had changed my views. And I had already prepared my own resolution here that some might say is even stronger than Don Curley's resolution. So I'm going to vote for it. And to bridge the gap between censure and formal disapproval, I would suggest the words be is hereby reprimanded for his comment.
You have one motion on the floor already. Is that a motion? I mean, motion to
Jim, would
amend.
you like to state that as an amendment to the
Or Jim,
original?
just, if you don't mind, state it in its entirety as you think it should read.
Yeah.
And if I believe it's superior, I would obviously support it.
Well, I'm going to have to wrote in shorthand, but the Board of Commissioners expresses its formal. The Board of Commissioners expresses its disapproval of comments to Daniel Sherry by John Nagel, Commissioner Nagel, and directs Commissioner Nagel to apologize and reprimands Commissioner Nagel for his comments.
Okay, I have no issue with that.
I prefer Mr. Curley's motion. I would like to stay away from those terms. I'm very comfortable, excuse me, very
What term
comfortable.
are you want to stay away from?
why don't we just stick with Curley's motion?
Pardon me?
What terms do you want to stay away from? And also,
I really prefer the language of Commissioner Curley's. I'm comfortable with that, and it satisfies what I think is necessary here. And I'm not comfortable going beyond it.
also, I think it's generally not done where you use individuals' names in a motion of censure.
Then let's take that out. Well, I mean, if you can edit, if you're going
I mean, I don't-
to, you can editorialize it, you can improve it that way if you want. That's fine.
Just say, leave his name out and just say apologize. All right, we have the motion, we have Don's
Well,
motion. We don't have any other motions
Well, wait.
seconded, so.
Can I
Again, my amendment, let me put forth
Can
the
I
amendment.
restate the motion, first of all?
Can you,
Don,
yes.
Don, go ahead,
I'm
Don.
trying to follow, the words, but what I got
Don's
from,
motion.
what I got from Don was a motion to express disapproval of the comments made by John Nagel at the board's meeting of December 8th, 2014. And the motion includes a direction to apologize to Mr. Sherry for
We'll
those
take
comments.
Mr. Sherry out, just a direction to apologize.
You can leave that in there. You can leave it, it depends on, I think that the important element is we should say, all right, people up here want to stay away from the word censure for some reason and say, well, this is what we're doing. The fact of it is that unless we say that, I don't think it means anything. And the fact of it is that, as we pointed out, this is beyond what would be, we've seen others who are more innocent punished more for less.
Okay. So, motion that the BOC expresses its censure of John Nagel. That's not, I mean, believe me, we're probably spending more time on, John Nagel probably has already gone to bed on this one. He's probably not, I didn't mean that, I meant, I'm sorry about that, it was inappropriate to say. What I meant is that I don't think John is going to be terribly concerned about whether we're probably paying more attention to that, on behalf of John. So let's motion the BOC express its censure of John Nagel for his comments to Dan Sherry at the December 8th, 2014 meeting and direct him to apologize to Mr. Sherry for the comments.
Again, I really prefer your original motion.
And Don, can we add, and to
also.
refrain from such conduct in the future?
Okay, we just have to be, I believe that it would be best if we had 6 people vote on this.
Well, then, do your original motion, you have 6 votes.
Okay. All right, so those that want changes, start making changes. If they survive, we vote on them. If they don't, then we vote on the baseline motion, which will.
That's the original motion that you put out.
Let me read it again.
Okay.
I don't think there's any objection to what John Fisher just added, is there? Yeah.
The original
Okay,
motion
so the motion is that the BOC express its formal disapproval of John Nagel's comments to Jan Sherry at the December 8, 2014 meeting, direct him to apologize for this comments and to refrain from similar conduct in the future. That's sufficient?
That's sufficient.
Okay.
Second. All right, we'll call the question.
So, hold on, Rich has an amendment.
I would add the word, move to add the word, let me see. Motion, all right, hold on. I would move to add the word, that the board, add the word censure so that it would read motion, it would read, the Radnor Board of Commissioners censures and expresses its formal disapproval of the actions by John Nagel, et cetera, et cetera.
Is there a second? Hearing no second?
Second.
Are all those in favor of the amendment to the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Opposed? All right, pass, it's defeated. Is there any public comment on the motion?
Thank you for the time. I'll be brief. Just so we're clear, if Mr. Nagel walked in here, I wouldn't know him at all. I wouldn't recognize him at all. So this is not personal at all. I would make these comments if it was any member of the board. It's funny to me as I listen to you, words do mean something. I live in a world of words. The reason you're tiptoeing about the word censure is because you all know it means something. It's a powerful word, censure. Think about it. The United States Congress censures somebody, it means something. When you guys in this township censure somebody, it means something. Have some guts. Stop tiptoeing. When you talked about an apology is the minimum that Mr. Nagel needed to do to Dan Sherry. That doesn't abdicate what this board needs to do. That was the minimum of what he needed to do as a civil person to another person. This board needs to now do something which says something about what the board stands for. I have to tell you that you were talking tonight, I thought back to when I was in high school, because when I heard that high school student said it, under my name in high school, let me tell you what it said, because I think it's important for what's going here tonight. Under my name, what it said was, what you stand for in life is important. But more important is what you won't stand for. That's why I'm here tonight, because I can't stand for something like this to go on in my township. I have never been here before. You probably will never see me again. But it's that important for me to stand here till 10 o'clock at night when I have to be in court tomorrow on important matters representing clients, that it's important to me to say in this township that this conduct should not be condoned. The word is censure. Have some guts and put it in your motion. Thank you.
It is difficult, obviously, to follow that type of oratory. Commissioner Curley, you brought up that you think that with this, we can move on. And indeed, if this board were to censure Mr. Nagel, I will move on. I won't keep bringing it up in Board of Commissioners meetings under the auspices of it not being addressed. Commissioner Schaefer's assertions that John Nagel is apologizing for this and takes this seriously are outrageous. Commissioner Schaefer, as being a Radnor Board of Commissioner, was copied, as were all of you, on Neil Morris's February 17th, 2015 letter. You know what he says in his letter. This is what he says. During a Radnor Township Commissioners meeting on December 8, 2014, Daniel J. Sherry Jr., in the midst of his typical harangue in the public comment portion, went far afield, and a frustrated, exasperated Commissioner John Nagel uttered, to no one in particular, "Somebody shoot me." Should Commissioner Nagel have said anything at that point? Probably not, but he did. So what? That's what Neil Morris sent to you all. So what? Words matter. In fact, since you all watched the video of the Ethics Board meeting, you heard Neil Morris say, it doesn't matter what he said. That's Neil Morris and John Nagel's world. But this board, this township, knows better. Words do matter. If John Nagel had responded to me talking about the Radnor Conservancy with, "Oh, Mr. Sherry, give it a rest," does anybody really think that there'd be an ethics complaint? Does anybody really think that this board would be considering taking formal action? No. It's because words do matter. And if people like Bill Spingler want to get up here and say, oh, you won't have a 6-0 motion if you put language like that in, well, that's important too, seeing how this board breaks down. Who on this board believes that we use words, as Mr. Rothweiler said, like censure? This board utilizes Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order recognizes motions to censure. That's what this is. This board censures Mr. Nagel. I cannot honestly believe that we're having that type of a discussion, but it is telling that the three people that are fighting against it are Commissioner Schaefer, who claimed at that December 8th meeting that she didn't even hear the remark, and Jim Higgins, who wanted to go into recess because he's now completely changed his mind. Exactly what caused your mind to be changed, that you had an epiphany tonight with John Nagel not even here? I wonder. But now you want it to be stronger? Demonstrate that. You know that's uncalled for. Here, this is your campaign website, sir, and let me read it aloud. My approach to government, first thing underneath that on Jim Higgins' website. I believe in civility in dealing with members of the public, other commissioners, township employees, and appointees to our boards. Public comes first. And yet you won't use the word censure? Do you think that's appropriate? Another page, sir, on your website. Radnor Township issues. public civility. My personal philosophy is and will be to promote courtesy at public meetings. Promote courtesy at public meetings and respect to people with contrary points of view. This is how you promote courtesy at meetings. You vote to censure John Nagel. You know it was wrong. You know that's the term of art that needs to be used here. I would waive even that language, having John Nagel apologize to me. I've seen how John Nagel apologizes. No thanks. Don't need that. I want this board, as Mr. Rothweiler points out, to speak on the issue. John Nagel has spoken on the issue. John Nagel's attorney has spoken on the issue. Now you speak on the issue. In fact, I wish you wouldn't direct John Nagel to do anything at all. You just put forth what this board thinks of John Nagel's conduct, which you all, with the express exception of Elaine Paul Schaefer, witnessed. I hope you will consider that. I hope you will not look to whether or not you can get unanimity. The word censure matters. John Nagel's record matters. The reputation of this board matters. In the future, people coming before this board need to have precedent. Right now, here is the precedent. No censure of John Nagel, at least not expressly stated by this board, for an outrageous comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Words do not matter to Neil Morris. Words do not matter to John Nagel. I trust that this board understands that words matter and will, as articulated by Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Booker, and I suspect by Commissioner Curley, insert that word censure into this motion tonight. Thank you.
David Wood. Mr. Fisher earlier mentioned a Radnor student who wrote on a bathroom wall, "It's people like you that make people like me want to bring guns to school to give people hugs." That's what he ended up spending 16 days in Delaware County Prison for as a 17-year-old kid. Now, what did he do that in response to? Somebody drew a swastika on the wall. Did he mean he was going to bring a gun to school? Did he own a gun? No. And you're not willing to use the word censure here? Are you kidding? This kid spent 16 days in prison for what he did. You're not recommending that he go to prison, are you? All you want to do is change the word. What kind of message does it send if you're not willing to do that? When you have students out there, and that's not the only one. There have been probably a case every other year of a kid going to a juvenile detention center or to prison for comments that they have made that are online or less than what was said here. And you need to use strong language to get it done.
I would say that we are in this situation because you guys didn't take strong action maybe weeks before this comment. Mr. Nagel said to Mr. Booker, "Oh, shut up." But nothing happened to him. And then it turned into somebody shoot you. So let's stop it. Use the word censure. Have some commitment. Make this Radnor Township stand for something.
Good evening. Parker Sherry Wayne. In Greek mythology, it's been said that Diogenes was in search of an honest man. If that's the case, good old Diogenes sure isn't going to be satisfied with what Commissioner Nagel claimed in his defense to the ethics complaint. No, he would view this highly unfortunate, disturbing turn of events, as one commissioner said here, as the actions of a desperate and defeated man, appropriately and comprehensively brought to task, and has his name, nay, his entire governmental service career exceedingly tarnished. Commissioner Nagel, though, says that he said, "Somebody shoot me," although he never publicly denied stating, "Somebody shoot you," at multiple subsequent Board of Commissioner meetings, and despite having the phrase, "somebody shoot you," properly attributed to him many times in the press. Any reasonable person that was allegedly misquoted to such an astronomical, unfathomable degree would have been burning the candle on both ends to make sure that this immediately got rectified. They would want to clear their name, especially in this internet age. Here, however, he went close to 2.5 months before trying to correct the record. Him trying to correct the record was performed with about the same sense of urgency and diligence in which O.J. Simpson and his team vehemently vowed to find the real killers. And perhaps Commissioner Nagel can write a book entitled "If I Did It," because he's still delusional in denying the conduct that everyone knows that happened here. Apology? Good grief, what a laughable apology. It's simply impossible to connect the dots and believe this proposition. He contends that his outburst was, quote, "not directed to anyone in particular." Obviously, if he stated, "somebody shoot me," he would not be apologizing to Mr. Sherry, he'd be apologizing to himself. So for Commissioner Schaefer to suggest that he really apologized here, to me demonstrates that she didn't even read the answer to the ethics complaint, or she doesn't know the definition of an apology. But he should apologize, and apologize sincerely. And he should apologize for everyone here. But this is an individual who, again, couldn't even bother to make it here tonight, and who clearly has no shame. I know that no one would really prefer to explore and would rather stay on the sidelines in light of such depravity and soullessness, or what would compel such an individual to utter such a wretched and violent remark. But it's absolutely necessary that you do this, and that this conduct is worthy of a censure, not a disapproval, but a censure. So trying to be at force with farce doesn't happen too often, but let's not take that to an extreme degree here. Mr. Nagel has tried to hold on to what he's done here, and his defenses of his indefensible conduct reek of desperation and cling to it like grim death, or perhaps a serious cold. But this is very, very serious. Anyone defending this kind of conduct and not saying that it is worthy of a censure undoubtedly has no self-control of their own. As per usual, the Ethics Board had its finger squarely on the pulse of its own rear end. But just because they are highly dysfunctional shouldn't prevent you from doing the right thing and properly concluding that the besmirched Commissioner Nagel should be censured. Please do the right thing and censure Commissioner Nagel. Thank you.
Good evening, Maya Van Rossum, 716 South Roberts Road. So I too believe that the language of censure is vitally important. I think that what happened was extremely offensive. We had a threat made, very threatening language was used. I listened to the tape. To me, it's very clear to whom the threat was directed. We had very abusive language used. We even had foul name-calling used up here on the dais. It was audible, and it was clearly designed to chill the public process. Yes, at that moment, it was directed against a particular individual, but sadly, I've seen Mr. Nagel direct his anger towards a number of folks that have come up to testify and to speak before you. And, you know, he is, frankly, feels very free to cast abusive language and an abusive eye on those that he does not agree with, whether it be them testifying up here or, frankly, out in the hallway, where often I have experienced it. So I do think that it's very important that you use the language warranted by the moment of this threatening, abusive, foul language, the language of censure. I do think that you should. Even though Dan perhaps is not interested in another apology, I do think it's appropriate to direct an apology be made to Dan, a sincere and earnest apology be made that is offered in public. But I don't think that Dan is the only person who is entitled to an apology. I think the Board of Commissioners is entitled to an apology. I think this really left a smudge on your credibility. So I would like to see an apology to the board. I would also like to see an apology to the public. There were many in the public who were offended by what happened here. There are many in the public who are affected by what happened here. And so I as a member of the public, frankly, expect an apology be directed to me and my fellow residents. I think it's very appropriate. I don't know if in the final iteration the language about refraining from this behavior in the future was ultimately included. I think it's very important that it be included. I think that the bad behavior, frankly, by Mr. Nagel has been chronic and escalating, and this was just sort of like the final icing on the cake with what happened at that fateful December meeting. But I do think you need to make it very, very clear. This cannot in any way, shape, or form happen again. It's not appropriate. And I think that the fact that Mr. Nagel allowed his attorney to be so incredibly abusive to Mr. Sherry and to the members of the public who were there to testify is, to me, proof positive that he is willing to continue this bad behavior if you don't take the strong, firm position that is necessary here. I also think that it should be included in your motion that this statement of censure be given to John Nagel when he is present. I'm not sure that that's understood. I don't think it's enough for you to vote on it tonight and to hand him a piece of paper. I think that he needs to sit here and look you in the eye and look the public in the eye and hear this statement of censure. So I'd like to see you include that in the motion. And frankly, I don't think that we should be so quick to cast aside repayment of the legal fees that had to be paid to Mr. Morris in order to defend Mr. Nagel. First off, those legal fees could have been avoided if Mr. Nagel had simply taken full responsibility right up front before you, before the public, before Dan, before the Ethics Board. All of that legal time and energy probably could have been avoided. So nobody needed to pay a bill at all had Mr. Nagel appropriately taken responsibility from the get-go for this. But that being said, you know, I've heard reference the Township Code, that there's a legal obligation to pay this bill on behalf of Mr. Nagel, and I don't think that that's the case. And I've actually pulled up the code language. But I think that, you know, there's an obligation to pay if the act was within the scope of such office or duties, or the employee in good faith reasonably believed the act was within the scope of such office or duties. I don't think using threatening, abusive language designed to chill public comment can be said to be within the scope of the offices or the duties of a Board of Commissioners member, nor that Mr. Nagel could in good faith believe that using threatening and abusive language designed to chill public comment was carrying out his duties as a commissioner. The code also says that that there is not an obligation to pay for legal defense if there are a number of things, among them willful misconduct. I think that the foul, abusive, threatening language that was here designed to chill public comment, I think that that was willful misconduct. So I don't think you have a legal obligation to pay the bill. And even to the extent that the code talks about the obligation to carry liability insurance, even there, when you look at that language, very clearly there is an out for the abusive, threatening behavior of Mr. Nagel, clearly designed to chill public comment. So I think that you should put back on the table discussion of having Mr. Nagel repay any fees that were paid to Mr. Morris in his legal defense. And frankly, whatever you decide to do on that front, I'd really like to know as a member of the public how much money was actually paid to Mr. Morris. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the...
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's. I'd like to remind you that not only did you take an oath, but you are also sitting as judge and jury. You're our Board of Commissioners. You really, when it comes to the municipal side of government, you are doing a wide scope of decision-making. And as was interesting to hear tonight, and nice to hear, was some of you were making findings about whether you believe the tape, whether you believe the video, and whether you believe testimony. With your power at that level, your appearance of impropriety or propriety, as we usually witness, is really important. And the breach here is unbelievable. I wasn't at the meeting, but I think there was a noticeable progression here. So when you're telling the public that you can deal with a serious problem, you've got to deal with the whole scope. This also happened to have happened in the month of December at the time of a very noticeable and disturbing frenzy in the media about people being shot. This also happened during the Christmas season. This had an enormous effect on your constituents. I want to ask you if you could kindly return this to the Ethics Commission. I think the Ethics Commission's decisions have been in a downward spiral, and you have to grasp that dragon by the neck. If you don't correct that, then we're going to have an underlying perception of lack of an ethics commission. This is a great opportunity to give public trust to an ethics commission. And at the least, you've got to say in your statement what sections were violated. I think as reasonable people, you could come up with that tonight to at least put some of that language in. I think that was a great suggestion. And finally, I believe an important thing to do is to have the topic that was being discussed that night disqualified for Mr. Nagel's participation. I don't know what it was. I don't mean the Conservancy. I mean the underlying topic. He should not have any participation ability in that topic ever again. And of course, we've appreciated Mr. Nagel's participation and committeemanship. Nobody wants to level something that's too serious. None of this is serious enough. Am I mistaken, or our charter gives implements for removal from office, and I think that this is entirely appropriate. I don't think anything you've done tonight has heated the public that was here earlier. We've got some folks with, of course, a lot of intellectual ability, but some of the best comments aren't being paid attention to.
I'd like to call a question now. All those in favor of the
Hold on,
motion?
I'd like to amend the motion, one more try. I'd like the motion to read the section where Don stated his original motion, where it states, the BOC expresses its disapproval. I would like it to state, in censure, the BOC expresses its disapproval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Fails. Now call the main questions. All those in favor of the main motion, say aye. Aye. Passes 6-0. Public participation? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned.